And then about 10 minutes later on the radio, a friend of mine's coming out, and he's like, "What are you guys doing over there?"
Just sinking.
Yeah.
Summertime fishing in the Northeast means cool mornings at the launch and hot afternoons on the water, followed by cold drinks at the dock. For days like that, the Hook A1A Pro collection is a winner. Made from ultra-comfortable jacquard fabric that's both lightweight and breathable, while also delivering UPF 40 sun protection that will keep me in the good graces of my dermatologist. The A1A Pro hoodie delivers a combination of airflow, sun safety, and comfort, keeping me cool on summer sessions, whether I'm on the John boat, in the Sound, or chasing that elusive swordfish out on the edge. Check out the full A1A Pro collection at hook.com.
Yeah, I was taught when I left last time, Bill and I had a good laugh driving home. And he's like, he goes, "We could have spent another 3 hours in there." And I said, "Yeah, well, the batteries ran out on the camera and everyone had to take a piss, so I don't think it was going to go any longer."
That might have been the longest
Regardless.
podcast of all time. He's got a lot of stories.
Oh. He blows me away with his recall.
Yeah.
Because when I sit and talk to him, anytime I see him calling, I always check the phone, and if it says Bill Cronin, I ask myself, do I have an hour and a half?
Yeah.
Because this is going to go like every time, and as you get to the end, sometimes like I'm driving home from work and I'm like, hey, I'm just about in my driveway, and I get out of
Another
the truck
thing.
one hand, and then I get up into the garage and I shut the garage. I still have the phone. I walk in, I turn the TV on, I'm getting something to eat. I have Bill going. I sit down in the chair, and then we turn it into a session.
Yeah. I think he said, I said, "Hey, Bill, we got to, we called a little timeout. Like, hey, we got to land this plane. Like, we're going on into hour 3. And he was like, "I'm not stopping. I got too many stories." It's like, "I don't care. You can shut the camera off. You can shut the lights off. I'll keep talking."
Yeah.
But Mike, welcome back. We wanted to kind of dive in with you ever since having you on for that one with you and Bill, and Jimmy joined us on that one. And, just from the surf escapades throughout your younger years, running around with that whole scene, to what we've seen you do with a jerkbait in your hand and a jig in your hand on the Sweetwater opportunities. There was a lot we wanted to dive into that, Bill had a lot of stories.
Absolutely.
And
we had
stories.
like I said, when we finished up, it was like if we had a little bit more time. So I greatly appreciate the invite back. I'm real happy to be here. And as on the ride down, you think about, I want to make sure that I tell you the story about this and that and whatever. So, if we have enough time today and we can get to them all,
Well,
take a stab
I'm pretty
at it.
sure we got into some of the earlier exploits of what got you into fishing and stuff. But like if you were to say like the first point in time where you were like, all right, I'm doing something, I'm really kind of dialing this in. Would you say it was on the surf side, or would you say it was on the freshwater side of things? Like going back to.
I went kind of back and forth because I grew up. I think I might have told you last time, we grew up on it's called College Pond. It's in Miles Standish Forest.
Yeah.
That was the first place. Like, we used to spend our entire summers there.
Yeah.
So we'd get dropped off. My dad ran the country club.
Yeah.
And then my mother and the 4 kids would be at the cottage for the summer.
Running amok.
That was the consummate Gen X growing up. Open the door. Just make sure you're back in time for dinner or whatever the hell you get into in the meantime.
Yeah.
So
that had to have been a playground, Miles Standish.
it was insane, dude. It was completely different culture. Now, like, if you go down there now, the cottages are all, they're knocked over, they've been abandoned and stuff. But like when you went down there in the summers, there were families at every cottage. My grandparents lived on the other side, and I have like 45 cousins.
Yeah.
So we always had there was this giant crowd of people there. And then you look out on the lake during the daytime, there'd be 25 sailboats out there, people going back and forth. And then a little bit of the time we get into bass fishing. It had some big bass in there back in the day, as did a lot of places back in the 70s before the modern, people just, there's more people now, there's more people pressuring every place. So everywhere you go is, it's a figment of what it used to be. And what we would do is we'd go down there for the summers, largemouth bass fish. And then a little bit of the time, when I grew up in the country club, we had ponds in the country club that had big bass in them. And one of the members there, his name was Dick Armstrong. And he got friendly with my father, and he said, your son really likes to fish. I want to take him surf fishing down at Nauset Beach sometime. So that's all I had to hear. I was like 12 years old. And it was the year after Tony Stetsko caught the 73-pounder,
Yeah.
November 3rd, 1981. And I got to know all the people that were part of that as my experience on the Cape and your network grows.
Mm-hmm.
You get to learn all like the subplots behind, you know, what really happened that night. How did he catch it? Where did he catch it? And I finally got my license and made my way out to. I'm going to tell you about the first big striper I ever caught, because the thing to me that really drew me in on the stripers was these things are like huge and you can catch them off the shore, and it's like, wow, you'd see pictures of whatever, 40, 50, 60 pounders. That's all I remember is the Stetsko, the picture of that 73-pounder, and I was like, my God, I need one of those.
It's a far cry from the biggest largemouth in the pond, which is also equally cool. Well, it's also cool, but that's just a tremendous, like, there's a whole airport in between that and what you can hook in the surf.
Yeah, and you would see like a 40-pound bass, and my eyes would bug out of my head.
Mm-hmm.
Anything I could do to catch one of those. I was young and inexperienced, and finally, when you think about catching the big striper off the surf, people are like, oh, it was a stormy night and it was blowing northeast and the waves were crashing, right? It was an October night, a full gill, and I was, you know, when I tell you how I caught my first, like, legit big bass, you're going to flip. So I started going out to Provincetown with a friend of mine. His family had grown up out there, so I never really fished the Outer Cape. But he would show me the pictures of, like, all the big bass they would catch out of the John boats and everything. And there was a blitz there in, I think it was 1986. So I started fishing during the moratorium era.
Okay.
So there weren't a lot of bat. There were, you know, relative to now, even people think, you know, right now they're scarce. You don't know what scarce is unless you fished like during the 1980s. And most of the fish were either the moratorium protected fish, the 1982 year class. And as those fish started to grow, they crept up the size limit to keep that. You know, that was like the stock that rebuilt the striper stocks. Yeah. So you'd either catch schoolies or you would catch, you know, not me, but I would see like giants caught. So finally I make my way to Nelson's, and that was the hub. I think I was telling you about Beach Forest last time. Everybody would gather there. And a friend of mine, his name's Dan Tower from Rentham, outstanding striper fisherman. He was a boat guy, and he did a lot of eel fishing in the boat. I got to know him through some of my other friends. And I think we were at Beach Forest one day, and he comes off and he says, you know, I just came in from the boat. Now, let me paint the background here. It's second week in August.
Okay.
Right? It's 95 degrees out. It's like hot as you can imagine. Mm-hmm. Not a single breath of wind. Dead low tide. Okay? So if I just gave you all those conditions and I told you I was going to catch a 40-pound class fish off the surf, you'd probably think I was completely, no way, dude, this is impossible, right? So he comes in, and I'm kind of like the wide-eyed newcomer. I'm like, everything that I hear, I'm like, oh, information, and you just like sponging everything up. And he kind of knew I was pretty excited about catching a fish. And he says, Michael, because I just came in off a high head, and I was drifting up close to the bar on the boat, and he goes, every time I would get close to the bar, they'd see the boat, and they'd spook off the bar. He said, there's a bunch of big stripers on the bar right now. And you're thinking to yourself, you're looking at the weather conditions, you're like, absolutely no way. So I was down there because I had a bad hand injury, and I had, you know, surgically repaired one of my fingers. And the doctor's like, don't. He goes, that's a very sensitive thing that I just fixed. He goes, don't get in the water, don't get your hand wet. He goes, you need to make sure that stays intact so you can, you know, you can recover.
So let me go surf fishing.
Yeah, so I go surf fishing. I wind up with the Wonder Bread bag taped around my elbow.
Hey, it's a great striper color.
Yeah. And this is like I said, this is your first big fish that you ever caught. So I drive down the beach and I get to High Head. And High Head, I'm not sure what it looks like now. I haven't been there in so many years. But it used to have a giant bar that would hook to the northeast. So when you get to the end of High Head Road, it was a big bar, and it probably went 150, 200 yards offshore. And on like a good moon tide, it would pop up out of the water. So I pull up and the water's all the way down to the bottom of the beach. It's like, it's dead low tide. It couldn't have got any lower. And I'm looking out into the corner, kind of like where Dan was like, he goes, go, see if you can walk out there with a spinning rod and a reel and get a cast into the corner of the bar. So I go through that first trough where it gets deep and then it comes up on the bar. So I'm like this deep, my hands up in the air. I'm trying to keep my arm out of the water so I don't get myself wet. And I start walking around the corner of the bar. And then as I get out to the corner where it turns, you can kind of see like where it drops off and the water gets really dark black. I'll tell you some stories about black water later too. And so I punch a finger through the bag so I can get the line, the line, and I fire the eel out there, and I leave the bill open, and I'm just standing there, and I know I'm gonna let it get down to the bottom. Maybe there's one down on the bottom. Now all of a sudden, the line starts peeling off the reel, like coming off there. I snap the bill over and I set the hook, and I knew just from the fish that those guys were catching that like everything you're going to get out there is going to be big. So like I'm thinking in my mind like this is going to be the biggest fish I've ever caught in my life. Screams line out into the middle of the hole. So I start walking down the bar back towards the shore. I had to walk about 100 yards to get back to the beach. And I'm standing there with a Wonder Bread bag on my hand, no shirt because it was so hot, and just a pair of shorts. And then I wind up walking it down the beach. I pull the thing up on the beach, and I was just like ecstatic. My heart's pounding. I was like, there was nobody around to see it. There's nobody out there fishing. There's no other trucks.
You by yourself?
Nothing. I'm all by myself. So I drag the fish up and I throw it in the box.
Yeah.
I hook another reel on. I'm like, maybe there's another one out there. So I go back out. Now the water's starting to come up. So now this time through the trough, I'm like nipple deep, and I got my hands straight up in the air. I'm like, I got to get in and out of here as quick as I can. Back out to the corner, I make another cast, same deal.
Yeah.
The line starts peeling off. I set the hook, fish takes off, and I'm thinking, I'm going to get another, like a PB fish back to back. That one winds up coming off. So anyways, I get back to the truck, and I'm just looking at the thing in the back of my truck. The gills are still puffing on it, and I'm like, oh my God, I finally got like that. It was like the crowning achievement of my lifetime. And I take the fish. I told you about Top Knot, Bob Lipka.
Yeah.
Previously, he would always buy whatever you had off you. So I'm like, all right, I got a 40-pound fish. I'll go get, sell it to Top Knot, get a picture. $60 back then. Mm-hmm. That was that was enough money for you to stay down there for like a week and continue your fishing escapades. So,
wow, times have changed, huh?
I bring him the fish. And he's like, what do you got? I said, I just got like a 40-pounder off the beach. He goes, you're full of crap. He goes, don't bullshit the bullshitter. Don't bullshit. He said it about 10 times. Don't bullshit the bullshitter. He goes, you got that from one of the boat guys. One of the boat guys gave it to you. No, I'm telling you, I just caught it off the beach. So he's like razzing me like there's no way you caught it. He goes, let me see that thing, right? I open up the box. The gills are still like bright red on it. I don't even think it was dead yet.
Yeah.
So I said, that's about 40 pounds. You usually give me like $1.50 a pound, $60. He goes, no. So we're going back and forth. He wouldn't budge. He goes, it's a 38-pounder. He goes, you get $57. He goes, if you don't want to take that, he goes, you could take the fish someplace else. So I mean, he took my $57 and my first big fish. He took a couple pictures of it, and that was like, I think I probably met Cronin that weekend too. It was a big weekend for me. That's my developmental years.
That's core memory stuff, right? Like when you see the biggest of something that you just did, it's like, whoa, that just happened. It's pretty special.
Yeah,
and you never forget it.
No.
And that set you on a path of like, all right, I want to surf fish now and live this life.
That's all I thought about. I had the I'll send you a picture of it sometime. It was like a 1982 Nissan pickup. I don't know if I told you about the last time. Like I drilled holes in the roof to put the rod racks on it. Yeah. Because at the time I couldn't find the ski racks. I finally got the ski rack, but my first one was a 2x4. And I had 5 or 6 pieces of PVC on it, and I drilled right through the roof of the truck to mount it to the roof of the truck. So like anytime the truck would bounce, you'd hear the bolts scraping on the roof. And then, God forbid, you were out there in the rain a lot of times, and you fall asleep in the front seat of the truck, and you wake up, and there's like a puddle on the driver's side floor from the water coming through the roof. So that thing was a unit. And I had this old steel fish box that somebody had made back in the day too, which was cool. There was a lot of customization in surf fishing. You remember like the old cooler racks on the front, and people would just weld everything and fabricate everything. So
Now
like when you
there's like something that you can buy for every purpose, it seems like, and it all was born out of like what people didn't have that they had to figure out, you know, their own way around. And I mean, you could do a whole podcast on modifications, I'm sure.
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
But now it's easy. Now it's like they make something for that.
Yeah. And the interesting thing about being alive at that time too is it was low tech. There's no internet. So if you wanted to figure something out, it was boots on the ground, or it was your network of people. And you'd have a couple of phone numbers. Like some of the people that I knew back, honest to God, 30 years ago, I still remember their phone number from the first time. Ron Ara I met when I was really young. And my aunt, she still lives on the canal.
Yeah.
And she lived like 3 doors down from John Gibbs.
Wow.
So I'd walk down and just talk to John Gibbs. And he was always great because he could see like a young guy getting into it. And I think the old timers were excited to see new people coming in, and they appreciated your enthusiasm and, you know, all right, new guys getting into the sport. I want to steer this guy down the right path, right? I probably experienced that yourself.
Yeah, they were and they weren't. You kind of had to earn it a little bit. Like, you had to prove yourself. I think everybody kind of had that, you know, I'm not just, like, I've put so much time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears into figuring this out, and I'm not just going to, like, share it with anybody.
Yeah.
You almost kind of had to, you know, prove your worth or your worthiness to be bestowed with that wisdom, right?
Absolutely. It was hard to come. It was secretive. And I somehow met Ron Ara through John Gibbs. So back in the old days, if you wanted to contact somebody, you just open up the phone book. You know, he's like, he's got a Ziplex and he gets these rods from England, right? And this and that. So I was like, I'm going to call him up and I'm going to get a Ziplex. So it was funny. I still, like I said, I remember his phone number from like the day, and I called him up. I'm like, Mr. Ara, hey, how you doing, young man? This and that. He was talking to me on the phone. What can I help you with? I said, I just met John Gibbs, and he said to give you a call about a Ziplex rod, right? And so Ron was laughing. He goes, you going to get it for your dad for his birthday or something like that? I go, no, it's for me. And I'm like 14 years old, right? So he got a chuckle out of it. And he goes, I'll make you a Ziplex TT. He goes, I'm going to autograph it, this and that, and everything else. He goes, and then when you get a chance, you can come down and pick it up. So he wound up tying the rod up for me. It was funny. And I finally got it to my aunt's house down at the canal. And I got to meet, like, he was already like a budding legend at the time with the long distance casting and this and that. So it was a big deal. And, you know, God bless him. I run into him all the time down at Scudder's clamming and this and that. He's still
doing it.
He still has like the energy, the enthusiasm, gentleman. I mean, he's
still
absolutely
moving rods and
he is.
signature series lures and all that stuff. He's still hustling in the fishing game.
Yeah, we've always kept in contact, and it's just funny. I just run into him every once in a while. We have all our winter gear and the hat pulled down, and he comes up with the glam rig. Ron, how you doing? Michael Luccini, how you doing? Come over, hug, and get catch up really quick. But what a guy! And there was and to your point too. Every time you get into one of these circles, they'd let you in a little bit on the information. But that was the big thing. Once you get it, it was like getting into the mafia. It's like once you're in, then you're like one of the guys, and they'll, But if you're not in, you don't get anything. Like they'll tell you, if they were catching them down here, they tell you to go this way. If it was, I caught it on an eel, you'd snap a bomber or something on the end. Everything was kind of like made to misdirect everybody, because when I started, everything was sold. It wasn't looked down upon like some people believe. It should just be like that's what it was. You would make money, and it was an honorable thing to do, bringing home your catch and selling it. So there wasn't really any, if people said if you had to go back and do it all over again when you change, no, because at the time you kind of adapt to like whatever the culture dictates at the time. And at the time it was, a bunch of hardworking blue collar people, and
the information wasn't there either. The big picture wasn't in focus. It was just what you did, and there was you know, it was almost like a limitless resource. It felt like, I know we had a moratorium, but like it wasn't enough to understand the big picture and be like, all right, you know, if we conserve this resource, it's going to mean this for the future. Like, it was almost short-sighted, but like there wasn't the information that there is today with all the science and the studies and this and that and understanding the impact and, you know, what's sustainable and what isn't. It just was a different time, you know?
And it was, I just remember at the time, there really weren't a lot. And there was always, if you talk to people about striped bass conservation and whatnot, you'll get like people might think that there's a lot more of them than there are because there's fish where they are, but not necessarily. The distribution of the fish is less.
Yeah.
So I just remember like growing up in the 80s, and you could go out in the night sometimes on the race and you could catch, I'm telling you, like 20, 30, 40 fish that were just, they did the right thing with the moratorium. They kept the size just over the top of those 82 fish. And then I think once they reach, is it 7 or 8 years old where they reach reproductive capacity? I don't remember the details, but I remember.
That sounds about right. I'm not the most, you know.
1989, I do remember there was another spike in the year class, and I thought that was attributable to the 82, the relative abundance. If you look at I actually did look at this recently on the Young of the Year Index, and the Young of the Year Index was below average except for 2 years. 1970, there was an above average. In 1989, there was an above average. So from 1970 to 1990, they were all below average year classes.
Kind of the stretch we're in now.
Yeah. So 1982 had a little bump up, but it was still below. And then 1980, and like to your point, there's a trough. The trough right now resembles what it did in the 70s. I'm not sure if it means the same things that it did back then. And, you know, we have brighter days coming.
Hopefully. I mean, I'm a big, you know, I think everything kind of moves in cycles and is cyclical. And, you know, the old Jurassic Park quote, which was one of my old man's favorite movies, life finds a way. That's what I'm banking on anyways. Obviously, there's things that we can do, you know, from a conservation standpoint. And I think that the culture has shifted in that direction to be mindful of that, which is great, which we've, you know, we're all striving for, you know, sustainability. But at the end of the day, like I was the 82 year class. Like that's when I was born, you know? So like, I remember like it was yesterday where, you know, my dad was huge into striper fishing in the 60s, you know, and, you know, through the 70s and whatever. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I was probably 3 or 4 years old. So that puts it at 85, 86. And, you know, we got back, you got, you know, a little sea craft. And after I almost, you know, went for a swim with a mako shark that was feeding on a bluefish, he sold his boat and was like, all right, we're gonna let you get a little,
too dangerous
little
for you,
wiser. You know, I was like, I'm gonna go jump on that thing's back.
We're going to keep you on the surf.
Yeah. So anyways, I remember like it was yesterday. We went out in Boston Harbor and we were ripping wire. Like, you know, it was just, he was really good at it. And we like doubled up on, you know, 30-pound stripers. And it was like the joy on his face. Like, oh my God, they're back. They're back. Yeah. They're back. Like he expected maybe we'll get a bluefish or two or something like that. But like they were sparse in that 80, you know, 485 time frame. And if I remember correctly, bluefish were more plentiful. You had pogie schools. It was like yesterday I put a pogie out. I was excited with the pogie at 2.5 years old. Then it got chomped in half, and I just remember its guts and blood. And I cried. He's like, no, put it back out there. Stop crying.
That's a good thing, kid.
Yeah. He's like, watch what happens next. And I caught a bluefish. But it was later on, maybe, you know, that season or whatever, we got 2 nice stripers. And I remember like it was yesterday. They were just laying on the deck of the Seacraft, and it was like, can't wait to get these home. It was just, you know, what you did. And it was like, there's more of them. They're back, you know, and he was just so ecstatic. And then you saw the numbers of fish just improve year over year over year. And it kind of kept up with that until it didn't, you know, which has been more recent than not. And I don't know.
Yeah, the 90s were insane. I talked to, God rest his soul, Frank Dano. I used to chat with him every once in a while. And he used to have on a website, I think it was called Striper Surf, and he had a page on there where you could come in and chat with them and whatnot. And people always talked about the young of the year index, and it doesn't work, and it's wrong, and this and that. And he had the best perspective on the young of the year index of anyone that ever heard. He goes, listen, and he'd act like the authoritarian and pound the table. Listen, this is the deal. So his description was the young of the year index isn't a perfect thing. Mm-hmm. You've heard people say, well, why don't you go sample them somewhere else? There's more fish and yada, yada, yada. So if you go over here, you're going to realize that there's more of them than you think there are. And Frank would say, even though it's got its imperfections to it, he said, what it does is it shows you a trend. He goes, so even if it's wrong or slightly wrong, he said it's wrong the same way every year if you conduct the survey in the same manner every year. So he said they sample certain parts of the reproductive Chesapeake Bay areas. They sample them the same way in the same place every year. So even if the number isn't exactly maybe what the number is in the ocean, it shows you what the trend line is.
Yeah.
And he said that's what that's for. It's to show you the trend of the population. And that was back in this is probably more in the 1990s once they were coming back up.
Sure.
And he said, you'll see, he goes, just look for the corresponding number of fish X amount of years hence after the year class is born. So he said, if you see a big, a burst in 1982, that's what he used to say. He goes, you have a big 1989 reproductive class because those fish just reached their reproductive, I think that's what he said, 7 or 8 years. And then those years there in the 90s were all gangbusters. I think the index was up in the 20s or 30s. If you look at the young of the year, it's low, 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 low. And then in the 90s, it's through the clouds. Those were the big years we had. And then you remember the canal? Were you down there for the canal, the first mackerel blitz in the canal?
So I was always kind of like a boat guy, So growing up in Hull, I ran around those shorelines plenty when my dad was working or whatever. But I was always jumping out on the boat with him when we had a chance. I didn't get into surf fishing until later in life, but did you stay on the beach scene, or did you kind of bounce around from the canal to the beaches? How did that take on?
So my yearly fishing was April usually up until the spawn, largemouth bass. It'd be April and May I would bass fish. Yeah. And then once the first burst of decent-sized fish would show up in the canal, sometimes it was the first week in May, sometimes it was around Mother's Day, but sometimes, that first 2 weeks of May, at some point, you could count on a substantial number of fish coming through. The herring bite would be good. And then I was in school, so I'd have to bounce down the canal, fish a tide, and come back. And then once they instituted a commercial season for striped bass, I think it was July. Start going out to the Cape, to the outer Cape, and you could sell what you caught out there in pretty good numbers, and you put enough money in your pocket to fill your gas tank, to reload your reels, and then once that would taper off, it would usually be sometime around Labor Day, I'd come back and fish the canal. So it was largemouth bass, canal, outer Cape. And the outer Cape was always a hike because a lot of the fishing trips you'd make out there, it was 2.5 hours to drive all the way out there, to air your truck down and get out on the water. You basically have 2 hours of good tide.
You fish out of a skiff?
Or off the surf.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'd bring my aluminum boat out. You'd wind up driving 5 hours to fish for 4 hours.
The people at Z-Man Fishing have been dedicated to ignoring the book on traditional lure making, instead setting out to create truly category-defining lures, soft baits, and jig systems that simply catch fish. At Z-Man, authentic innovation remains a badge of honor, recognized and admired by countless fans worldwide. I'm one of those fans. I fish countless Z-Man products in both fresh and salt, from their chatterbaits to their soft plastics made from a material they call Elastec. Some of the most naturally acting, durable soft baits I've ever fished. I've caught PBs on their smallest baits, like on a massive brown trout, choked a micro finesse TRD while targeting smallies, to hooking giant tarpon and redfish on their diesel minnows, which are also phenomenal striper baits. The best part is, when bluefish show up, they'll hold up to them too. Give them a look at zmanfishing.com or ask for them at your local shop.
It's like the canal now. If I said to you, what's your preferred time to go fish the canal, I would say most everyone is going to say the end of the west and the very beginning of the east, right?
Yep.
And it's really like a 3-hour time period. It's not like it has. There's parts of the canal that probably have bites all through the tide. Like when we used to bait fish there, you could take a lot of fish like on the middle to the upper part of the east incoming tide.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go just for that one targeted opportunity nowadays, it's typically like the water's constricted, it's down low, everything's jammed in. The end of the west tide. It's been the mackerel for a lot of years.
Yep.
With mixed in squid. I didn't get down there for the squid blitz. I heard all about that.
I saw a video of it. It looked crazy.
And then some of the late bites, there were mackerel coming in late, there was sea herring coming in late and whatnot. But it's funny when people talk about, you need a lot of menhaden to have a lot of bass. This is another thing I always used to chat with Frank about.
Yeah.
People would say, the menhaden are threatened, the striped bass are going to deteriorate. He's like, listen, he goes, those things will eat anything that'll fit in their mouth. He goes, if you cut open the stomach contents, because when people used to sell them or harvest, to a greater degree, you'd see things in there that you weren't expecting. And he said, there's all kinds of things that they can eat. It's not dependent on one type of
It'd probably be
bait
easier to name what you haven't seen in a striper belly
everything.
than what you have. They do eat everything. I mean,
yeah,
everything.
Because we used to go to the canal like for anywhere from like the middle of May until the end of the herring run. Okay, and what we used to do, like I'd fish down to the east of the run, and on one time I brought in this big. We called it like it was a football. It was like the fattest striper I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, I wonder how many herring he has in it. And this is right during the peak of the herring run. It's black from like pull 175 all the way back to the herring run. Like it's like herring. And take the thing open and cut. You take it home, cut it open. It's all full of sea robins.
Go figure.
Yeah. He took a herring, but there wasn't a single herring in the thing's stomach, and I don't think you could have stuffed another sea robin inside that. He must have maybe picked them up coming through the migratory route in Buzzards Bay or whatnot. And another time I caught one that was full of, what do they call them, kingfish whiting?
Yeah.
Same deal during the herring run.
Oh, the northern kingfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing had, you couldn't have stuffed another one down the thing's throat. I caught it on a live herring, opened it up thinking it was going to be full of herring, and it was full of whiting.
That's funny.
So go figure. And
yeah, they eat everything, literally.
Yep.
From crustaceans, lobsters, sea bass, small tog, cunner,
anything that'll go down
everything.
there. So who knows where it's going now?
What was your most memorable blitz that you encountered in the surf?
Oof. I have a couple. Here's a real interesting story. You remember Bob Samuelson, God rest his soul, and Greg McSharry. And this is a crazy story. I forget exactly what year it was, like 2009 or 10. And so this is how I kind of knew these guys from going to Red Top.
Yeah.
And it was like the middle of September. It was September 20th, I think. September 19th or 20th. It was a full moon. There was a hard southwest wind blowing. There was a couple guys out on the bar, and the tide was, I think it was like 10 o'clock. It was a couple nights before the full moon. It wasn't the actual full moon, but it was right there. So I get out on the bar, and I was always like, when you go surf fishing, if you even catch a fish, it's like a trophy. It's a good catch. It's like you never really think about loading your numbers up and this and that. So I get out on the bar, and I had this white needlefish that I made.
Yeah.
It was a copy of a Gags that I like when I was making plugs. George Chrisman showed me how to turn plugs and this and that, and so I wound up making this white needlefish. And I get out on the bar as the tide was dropping, and it's like 8:30, 9 o'clock. I'm casting, nothing. And about 10 o'clock, I get like a 20-pound fish. So now I'm extremely happy. I'm out on the bar. I'm all by myself. Everybody's gone. And I'm like, I'll stay a few more minutes. And so anyways, one thing leads to another. And I counted like no less than like 40. By the time I get all done at the end of the night, I probably had put like 40 fish on the beach. They were like mostly like 20 to 30 pound fish, just like amazing.
Yeah.
The blitz of a lifetime. And it's dead low tide. And I can see the two red lights on the other side. That was Bobby and Greg, who I'll tell. The story's crazy. I'll tell you what happens later. So they had got into them on the other side, and then I had gotten into them on this side. So I see the lights, and then all of a sudden the lights fade, and you can tell like it's the bottom of the tide, and the tide's just starting to come up. It's like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. The wind dies. Then you get that east fog that starts to come in. So now I'm out on the bar, and I'm like, I'm getting kind of greedy. I'm like, I'm going to get a couple of more fish, and then I'm going to get out of here. So within about 5 minutes, the fog rolls in, and now I'm standing on the bar. I don't know which way the shore is. So I'm listening out, and there's a little bit of a trough between the bar and the shore, deep enough to give you a problem if you set your feet in the wrong place. So I listen out, and I'm like, the fish have to be this way, so the beach has to be this way. So I cast out. I hook up another fish, and now I'm trying to get from the sandbar to the shore, and I can't really see. So now I step into the water, and I feel the water pressure on my knees. Go a little bit farther, now it's on my thighs, and I'm like, oh, just don't be in the wrong spot. Don't be in the wrong spot. I have the rod over my shoulder. The fish is running this way. So I'm guessing that the deep water is this way and the beach is this way. So finally, I get to where I feel the water pressure drop, and now it's going from like my thighs to my knees to my ankles. And that fish has got about 150 yards of line out. I drag it. I could see it on the bar. I could feel it like slapping on the bar.
Yeah.
Because the clouds were breaking out. It was a full moon.
Yeah.
So the next wave kind of pushes the fish into the hole. I reel the fish up. It was like a 31-pounder. Now I'm just happy to get out of there, like to get off the bar and get off the water, like safely. And so this is where the story takes a wild turn. So I get home, and I called up a friend of mine. You got to get down there. I go, there were fish in there like you're like I've never seen anything like. There's like sand eels blowing out of the water. You can hear fish blowing up. So it was Mike Varaca. So he goes down with this story. And when I called Greg McSherry and told him the story. He never heard it before. I said, I didn't call you to tell you that I saved your life. I called you to tell you that I was like, I always remember this story like, oh my God, what if I didn't make the phone? I just like got thrown into this story frame that you could have never predicted. So I called Mike, and I'm like, you got to come down there tomorrow night and get on. So anyways, Mike goes down the next night with this, his kid's name was Max. Bob and Greg came in from the town beach side and walked down. And then you probably heard the story. Bob wound up in the water, and Greg, he's a hero, went in the water to try to save Bob.
Bob was in waders, right?
Bob was in waders, I believe. And they both got swept out. Mike, who knows if he would have gone down there, like if I hadn't given him the phone call, hey, you got to be down there tomorrow night. So he was on the Sandy Neck side, heard the guys in the water calling for help, calls the Coast Guard. So I think Greg told me he was in the water for like 45 minutes. When the helicopter came, they finally located him and they saved him, brought him back to the mainland. You know, and they recovered Bob too. Bob, you know, like I said, God rest his soul. He was I guess I didn't know him really well. He was a Coast Guard guy, very capable. And
so they went back the second night.
Yeah.
When you called Mike to go back.
Yeah.
And that's when they got in trouble.
Yeah. They were going back either way. They weren't. They were probably already on that bite.
Yeah.
So I thought about it, and I was like, oh my God.
Dude, you were one turn away from being in the same situation.
So a lot of years went by, and then I was thinking about the story because I was telling somebody about the blitz. And I said, I wonder if Greg ever knew what happened. So I got his number, and I called him up, and I'm like, hey, long time no see, buddy. He goes, yeah, what's up? I go, I always wanted to tell you the story, but I never wanted it to seem like, you know, I'm not calling to say like I saved you or anything like this. I'm just telling you like this story was always like on my chest, and I was like, oh my God, if it hadn't happened the way it happened.
Yeah.
And after we were getting ready to hang up the phone, he was just like silent on the other phone. He's like, wow. He goes, I know no one ever told me that before. He's like, thank you. I go, no, I didn't call you for a thank you. I always wanted to tell you the story, and I was like, it just brought shivers to my spine. You know, what if those guys didn't show up the next night, and who knows what would have happened? Just crazy. But it's like it was the greatest night of fishing I ever had, then followed by just like an unthinkable, a
Divine
tragedy.
intervention,
It's
luck.
like
Yeah,
crazy
I
how
mean, yeah.
you just get inserted into things.
It
And
could have easily been 2.
another time I got a call from Tom Murphy. He was a New Yorker that fished out on the Cape. And it's crazy how like the fall fishing, I don't know if you ever noticed it, but it always seems to like, you get to that big fall fishing blitz around September 20th. I don't know what it is
You like
about
the
that
spring
day,
or
but
the fall
somewhere
better?
around that. Well, fall fishing can be hot and heavy,
Yep.
right?
It can also be kind of a little bit of a letdown.
It can be a bust.
Yeah.
But out there, we would typically have, you get the big fish would start to set up on the outer Cape like in July. I think they just went out there and they spent the summer out there. They weren't migratory fish. They were just like pods of these big fish that were set up from, I don't know, they'd go anywhere from High Head all the way down to Nauset. And the crazy thing about it, when I was talking earlier about the black water, this is what we used to fish, is this guy, his name was Paul Herscher. He's a fireman from New York. And there's a picture of him in Frank Dano's book, 20 Years on the Cape Paul. He's standing on the tailgate with the 55-pound striper that he caught off the surf. And we knew who he was, but we were like, he's up there. He's like legit. We can't just go over and talk to this guy, right? So we'd see him out there all the time. And he was in a little John boat with one of his friends. And he would have a spinning rod, one of those old yellow honey glass rods, 25-pound test, a barrel swivel, an octopus hook, whaling like 40, 50-pound fish in the middle of the day. With the
There's always those guys.
in a John boat.
Those
And,
honey llama glass blanks were the best.
So finally, like he would see us on the beach, and I didn't realize after, like he had a son that was around our age, so like he saw us out there, and he's like, all right, he goes, I want to make sure these guys are okay.
Yeah.
So one day he pulls over and was sitting out on High Head, like in the middle of the hole, like could throw the, hey, come on over. He was like a high energy. He was a hot shit.
Yeah.
I mean, he was like talking to Joe Pesci, right? Come on over here. I want to tell you something. So we start talking about fishing, and he's reminiscing about the 70s and this and that and everything else. And this is like during like the early 90s. He goes, the fishing's better now than it was in the 70s. Don't let anybody fool you. He goes, the 70s, we had a couple of big years. We had 77, 78, 81. He goes, but the fishing now, there's more fish now. It's better now than it's ever been. Let me tell you guys, you didn't miss anything, not being here. And so every time we would see him on the boat, we'd see him with his eyes cupped. So we're like, can we ask you a question? What are you looking for, like with the eyes? He goes, I'm looking for the mung. He goes, the fish are in the mung. Did you know that? And we're like, no. Like, we see the mung on the beach. You typically associate it with stay the hell away from this
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
But what we've later learned after talking to him is, like, the mung is kind of weird. It isn't always suspended in the water column. Sometimes it's right on the bottom.
Yeah.
So you might have 10 or 15, 20 feet of clear water. And then I don't know what causes it. Maybe it's the tide. Like, as the tide sweeps it one way or another, it does different things. But he said, when you drive out here, he goes, look for the blackest water, like the darkest bottom. He goes, that's the mung in the bottom. And the bass, even though that fish that I told you I caught off the bow, that was in one of those corners that was full of mung in the middle of the daytime.
Yeah.
And those big fish would come in the middle of the daytime, right near the shoreline, if there was enough of a dark
They just
cover
lay
on
in
the
it or
bottom.
lay
They
on
would
the
just
edge of
sit in
it,
Yeah,
or-
they would sit in it.
No, wow.
And
I hate mung.
Yeah, and it's
It's so
amazing that
annoying.
there was like
It's
so many
such
fish
a pain.
tied up in it. So the biggest catch of my life was in a boat, and we came out of Nauset Inlet. Again, context is always important. There was a hurricane off the coast of New Jersey coming up, right? So my buddy and I are like, let's get out there and we'll get in and out before the hurricane, right? So we come out of Nauset Inlet because it was like, if we were going to stay for a few days, we would drag the boat up and launch it off the surf and just go out into the surf. So this is going to be a one-night shot. So let's go out of Nauset Inlet. We know that it's always sketchy down there. Like, I don't think I've ever gone in and out of Nauset Inlet without my stomach, like, coming out of my mouth, like just absolute stress, panic attack going in and out. If you have any experience going in and out of there.
I haven't. I don't think I've left it by boat.
Yeah. But Yeah, us two geniuses decide we're going to go out ahead of the hurricane. It probably won't get here till tomorrow afternoon. We'll be all set. We're like in our 20s. We don't care.
Fish make
So-
you do a lot of dumb things.
Yep. So, anyways, we wind up going out of Nauset Inlet. We drive all the way up to High Head. It's about 18 miles. It's like 16 or 18 miles out of the inlet, like a 17-foot center console. And we get there. What used to happen, I think, is a lot of the fish would come, they either come off of Stellwagen or George's, and they would set up off of like the Mission Bell and High Head before they would start moving. So we get there at like 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's the first day of like the end of the commercial in August. We throw, honest to God, we threw 6 lines over the side. We had 6 fish in the boat and about 5, like heavy fish, like high 20, 30-pound class fish.
Mm-hmm.
So at the end of the night, high tide, it was literally on the new moon, high tide, midnight, we have 40 fish in the boat, and we're still catching fish. And I don't even know how many pounds we had. Like we had, I'll tell you what it was later. So the bite stops, and I'm like, John, my buddy John that was with me, I'm like, do a head count, make sure we're legit here. Like it was back during commercial when you could keep 40 fish, right? This is the biggest catch I've ever had in my, of any kind. So he goes through them, and he's like, yep, 30. He goes, we got room for a couple more. Let's make a couple more casts. So now we back into the hole, and now you can feel like that hurricane swell starting to build.
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm going to stay on the helm. You get the fish. So he gets the 2 more fish. And then it's high tide, but the waves are almost breaking on the bar. So you know if the waves are breaking on the bar at high tide, you're in for a hell ride going home. So I come outside.
It's such an unsettling feeling.
Oh, I'm even telling the story now. I'm going to have a panic attack telling the story. But I'm here.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, okay, it's midnight, and the sun's not going to come up till about 6 o'clock. What the hell are we going to do for the next 6 hours before we try to go back in through Nauset Inlet? He's like, just bump it into drive. And he goes, so this is what we did is we cruised all the way around the outside horn of the Cape. Far enough outside the barrier bars so we didn't get turned on one of the bars, and then inside the pot line.
Yeah.
So the outer Cape, it's got like the beach, and then it has the trough, and then it has the outer bar, then it has a trough, and then it has the pot line. So we're trying to stay just inside the pot line. Like I could see the pots on the pot line on my plotter. And we literally drove back to Nauset 5 hours, like 1,500 up, just barely, like with the prop and gear. And as you start to turn the horn of the Cape, you're on the northwest side when you're up at High Head.
Yeah.
So you're not really dead facing east into the swell. But as you come around the horn, now you're in like Wellfleet near the beachcomber and the hollows over there. And now all of a sudden you can see like the big dark stains on the waves coming in. And all I'm thinking about the whole time is the tide's going to be dumping out of Nauset Inlet.
It's gonna be stacked
And you're
up.
going to have those waves going in. And I was just, even now thinking about it, I was like, oh, we should have turned around and just gone into Provincetown Harbor.
Yeah.
So finally you can start to see the dawn of the new day coming in the east. And we get just outside of Nauset Harbor, and the surf is so big because now the tide's starting to dump out of there, and the swell is coming in, right? We kind of misjudged where the hurricane was. It was probably in, New York, or it was too close. So the surf is so big, you can't really see the high flyer. There used to be like 2 high flyers they would put outside the channel on Nauset. So like as they moved, I think they would adjust them so you could navigate getting in and out of there. So can't see the high flyer, and I'm getting a little bit anxious. I'm like, I just want to get in and get on that side of the bar and get inside of the harbor, and all is good. So so we start steaming and thinking that we're going right towards the channel, and we weren't. We wound up catching the outside edge of the bar, but the surf was too big behind us. It was following, so I'm like, I can't turn around now. The boat's going to flip over. So we're going to just like wait till the boat floats over the bar, and then we'll be in the channel. So as luck would have it, the next wave came over the back of the boat, fills the back of the boat up.
Oh, that's
So
fun.
now I'm like 50 yards off the beach. There's so much weight in the boat, I couldn't, the boat wouldn't bite.
Yeah.
I couldn't bump it to get it to move. So I try to bump it, and all you can hear is like the motor doesn't want to move. There's like 1,000 pounds of fish in the boat, plus us, plus the water. So I get the boat kind of like rammed up on the beach, and then another wave comes in, and it just fills the boat up with water. So now we're on the bar with the tide coming out, and there's just enough, there's probably like this much water. So we're in water, but the boat had so much weight in it, it was like stuck on the bottom. So I said, let's just get out of the boat and leave it here. I don't want any part of this. I go, we're gonna drift back out over there, and we're gonna flip over, and we're gonna get killed, right? My buddy John's like, no. He goes, don't throw the fish out. We'll be all right. I go, no, we're not gonna be all right. Let's just leave the boat. I don't care. I don't care about the boat. He goes, no. So we're bailing the boat out. We open up the scud as the water comes out. And then about 10 minutes later on the radio, a friend of mine's coming out, and he's like, what are you guys doing over there?
Just sinking.
Yeah. I go, we saw. He goes, what are you doing over there? The channel's way over here. So the channel was another 100 yards. We had no idea where the channel was. I completely misnavigated because of the surf. So here's what happens is he's like, you get on the helm. He goes, we're going to get the boat back in the water. And he literally got in the water with his hand on the bow rail, and he walked us all the way down the bar to the channel. And he goes, then we get close to the channel. He goes, I'll jump over the rail. You fire the boat up, and we'll get back inside. He did what a pair of nuts and a pair of balls on this guy. Still one of my oldest and best friends. And
that's a good save the day story. That's a dicey situation.
We get inside the harbor, and I look at the cooling system on the boat, the pisser that comes out the back, there's nothing coming out of it. So I'm like, there's no way we're going to make it. We launched the Goose Hummock, and we came all the way through Nauset Marsh and out. So I get around the corner, and I'm like, we got to throw the anchor and let the motor cool down. And I was thinking back to an old trick somebody showed me with a steel leader, bluefish leader.
I've done that.
So I'm like
before.
looking in, and I'm like looking in my box. I don't have any bluefish gear in there, but I had this one piece of black steel leader.
There's always a steel leader kicking around.
I snipped the barrel swivel off it, and put it in.
Yep.
I roto-rooted it 2 or 3 times, and then when the water started coming out, I was like, oh, thank God.
I had like Malin, like piano wire that I would, keep around for sharks or whatever.
Yeah.
And it happened to my old HPDIs a couple of times, and it's like, oh, I got just the thing, and worked like a charm.
Yeah, we get back. So we got back. We had 960-something pounds of bass, 40 fish,
In your
whatever that
20s,
average
now,
is.
like,
Yeah.
you do a lot of dumb stuff for
there
fish.
was
Was
no
that
fear.
the closest oh shit moment that you had out on the water?
That's the closest I came to losing the boat, because if I was alone and I get into that, I would have just bailed. I would have just left the boat there, and I would have got on the bar and walked back.
Not a bad call, but to be able to pull the salvage off is pretty good.
Yeah, we got the boat back, and that was the biggest haul. Except maybe some of those canal blitzes, like you don't know when you were getting the numbers that were coming through the canal.
What were you fishing when you were fishing eels?
We were fishing eels.
Yeah.
Yep. And that was the mode out there, because they worked pretty good in the mung. You could keep them pretty clean. You couldn't really fish treble hooks or plugs or anything.
The mung's so tough. That's probably your best bet. Even unweighted soft plastic gets gummed up so fast.
30-pound big game. Newell 229 reel.
Newell.
And
those were so advanced for their time.
Yeah.
We used to use the Senators, and we used to use when the Newells. Those were such great reels for their time. They were way ahead of their time.
Absolutely. And then when you could get the improved bearings on it,
It was so light.
I think Ron Ara showed me how to do like they used to heat the bearings up, and they put it in a spoon.
Yeah.
And they'd heat the bearing, and then they would put some kind of like a slick oil. And he said when it gets hot, he goes, the metal will absorb.
That's some straight fish junkie stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. These guys had like those distance.
It's crazy.
casters
The ingenuity that people would figure out and come up with out of necessity is just like, what made you think of that?
Yep.
What was your favorite surf fishing boat? What's your favorite? Surf probably is more appropriate. What's your favorite type of bite when they're eating? What plug or what bait? Like, for me, it's hard. A needlefish bite is kind of pretty cool.
Yeah, needlefish used to be. That was the mode when you were up at the race in the springtime. You go up Race Point. Yeah.
Like the actual thump that it's just a little different than, say, a minnow plug or a paddle tail or something like that. I think that's That's kind of, well, we're going to talk about this on the freshwater
Yeah.
side of things too, because the
Absolutely,
type
yeah.
of eat, the type of bite, I there's something about that makes me want to catch fish a certain way. So in the surf, what type? What was it for you? The eel bite's pretty cool too.
I always liked, and my brother will tell you this too. He's done equal or more fishing than I have. Like anytime you can fish with a single hook, fish with a single hook, because number one, you're going to have, if you get a big fish with the single hook, you have a higher chance that you're going to land the fish. It's not going to get distorted or this or that, and you're not going to foul hook it. It's usually
there's less leverage on it than
there's less leverage. So I always, when we were targeting the really big fish, it would always be like on the surf. It would usually be an eel bite, but I would always go up the race at the end of June. That like the last 2 weeks in June and the first like week or 10 days of July, before the fish would come around the horn and set up on the back, used to be you'd have to have a southwest wind with a lot of turbulence and then an outgoing tide, and you could that was usually one of the best bites. But I always liked the single hook, even the storm shad bite in the canal. We had a blast with that. Same deal.
Yep.
Single hook fishing, pretty easy to release. And then as I started, like I said, George Chrisman taught me he was one of the people who taught me how to make plugs. And I became a lot less afraid of treble hooks after he educated me on take the bobs off them. He goes, you're not going to lose a fish off a treble hook because you don't have a bob on the hook. He goes, you will not. He goes, I absolutely, positively promise you. He goes, make yourself safe. He goes, especially because he knew we were wetsuit fishing. And he's like, if you're out there in a wetsuit and you're on a rock and you have a treble hooked fish and it gets stuck in you, this or that, he goes, you're going to have a world of problem. He's like, and he took me out on a couple adventures along the Elizabeths with he and I and Alan Courts. If you met Alan, those guys are just like,
met Alan.
These guys are like salt of the earth, just like surfmen beyond any, comparison, all plug fishing.
Yeah.
And he used to give me a hard time. Like when we were on stripedbass.com, he would always heckle us about, you damn eel fishermen, you're taking the easy way out and this and that. So once I started turning plugs, that kind of became my preferred. That was the bite for a while. The treble hooked, and then anyone listening, I challenge you to crush the barbs on your treble hooks if you're fishing pencil poppers or a swimming plug or this or that. I've done it ever since George educated me. I've never had a fish fall off because I didn't have a barb.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say go like tuna fishing or jigging or anything like that, but for striped bass, if you have a bend on your rod, you have enough pressure. And
Fight the fish right. I mean, you can get it in barbless. I mean, there's a big movement on just going to singles. I mean, guys are doing it with their docks. They're doing it with a lot of their plugs now. I mean, I think you lose less fish, to be honest with you. It's just, I think people get stuck on the bites they might feel like they missed because of a single over a treble. But a lot of times, if they're going to eat it, you're going to catch that fish on a treble or a single, and you probably have a better chance landing the fish with a single. And then on the conservation side of things, it does less damage. You might button a couple more fish with the trebles, but where? Outside of the face? Chances are you end up pulling that out a lot of times anyways, unless it finds a better purchase. But in the process, you rip the fish,
Absolutely.
And it either comes out or, it finds purchase somewhere a little, more secure.
Especially on the smaller fish too. Like I don't like fishing for small fish, not because I'm too cool to catch a small fish, but like if you fish, when I say small fish with treble hooks, because a lot of times they do like the treble winds up in the gills or winds up in the eyes or it swings around and catches them on the. So even though you're well intentioned, I'm catch and release, and you get puncture wounds from the tail, like that Siwash hook punctures the belly and the back and this and that. So whenever I can fish with a single hook, I fish with the single hook. There was another rig I used to use for the surf. Guy named Leslie Schwam. He was a charter captain out of Hyannis. He's arguably one of the best hook and line fishermen, and anyone that knows him would probably agree with me to ever fish the waters of the Cape, salt water. And he told me about this rig. He like, this is what we used to use in the 70s for commercial. He says you get an atom popper. Now, people have made all different variations of this, but he said this is what we used to use. He goes, single hook, you get the fish in quick, you get them on hook quick, and then you get another one. All it was is the small atom popper with maybe like 30 inches of 20-pound mono.
Yeah.
And then an Upperman jig on the end of it. That was your surf rig, and you would cast it out, and he goes, you just pop the pop, and he goes, and then the fish would all hit the jig.
Yeah.
I became a believer in adding scent to my striper plugs one night when I was getting half-hearted bumps on my needlefish, but no solid takes. While switching lures for the umpteenth time, I found a forgotten tube of fish attractant that had fallen to the bottom of my plug bag. I squeezed some onto the lure, and the next light tap was followed by a hard thump. Since then, I've always had a tube of Procure bait scents with me in the surf. These fish attractants are made from real, whole bait fish and supercharged with amino acids that boost the natural flavors and trigger the feeding impulse in fish. Of all the Procure offerings, I like the Super Gel best for surf fishing. It's a super sticky liquid that I squeeze into the belly hook hanger of my plugs and slather it onto my soft plastics and trailers, knowing it's going to last for multiple casts. There are dozens of scents to choose from, covering freshwater, saltwater, and ice fishing. But for striper fishermen, look for the bunker, eel, squid, mullet, mackerel, and every bunker chunker's favorite, anise. To see the full lineup of Procure products, visit pro-cure.com.
Another like super night I had off of Nauset Inlet was with the jig and popper. Just a little 1/4 ounce to a 1/2 ounce jig with the white feather tail, and then 30 inches of mono. Back in the day, I was fishing. It was 25-pound big game. It was a little bit gawky to cast, because you have like you
kind
throw
of like
it.
the cast and bubble deal.
Yeah, it's the same idea. It's all it
Yeah,
was. It was a
of course.
cast and bubble in place of a fly.
Yeah.
And it would tumble out, but you could keep it like I used to fish it a lot off South Cape Beach, which had a couple of rocky sections, and then if you didn't keep the jig off the bottom, you'd wind up losing all kinds of gear. So I started fishing that. I started fishing that rig almost
everything up a
exclusively in the
little bit.
spring. You catch a ton of fish on it.
Yeah.
Basically fly fishing with a spinning rod.
You still
if
do a
think
lot of
about it.
surf fishing?
I've kind of gone away from it now in favor of the. I got into bass. I've always largemouth bass fish, and then in 2020, like during COVID, when you couldn't do anything but either play golf or go fishing,
Yeah.
I bought a kayak, and I kind of upped my interest and my effort into the freshwater side of things.
So that's been a renewed passion for you. I wanted to talk to you about that because, you know, the surf stories. I wish Jimmy was here. Jimmy's a little bit more experience in the surf world. I've been along for enough of those exploits, and I know that was a big part of your main pursuits growing up. But it was the freshwater stuff where it was like, all right, I want to dig into some of this with you because you catch a lot of big largemouth, and it was around that time where you kind of went in with both feet and got back on the big bass hunt in the freshwater. Yeah,
I got away from Cape Cod fishing for stripers just because everybody kind of migrated out of there. Like the fishing went downhill, and then you had the seals and all that. And it's like, I really don't want to go out there and invest the amount of time.
It's kind of a fruitless effort a lot
it is.
now. I mean, you got the canal seems to be the most consistent, but then on the negative side there, you get the crowds, and it's just a magnet for all walks of everything, right? And then the people that are going to literally travel like Jimmy does and get his e-bike on and go from the North Shore to the South Shore, it's no longer there's little windows where the Cape Beaches fish well. It's just not as sustainable as it seems like it was back then. And I think it really comes down to just changing patterns and cycles where it's like you got to look in different places that aren't, the iconic grounds that they once were, that it's happening somewhere else at different intervals of the season, and it's a much bigger lift and commitment. It's a hell of a lot easier to go.
So that kind of pushed me towards
big bass.
largemouth.
They can't leave.
So I kind of fished it. I fished for bass my whole life. But like I mentioned earlier, I'd fish right up until before the spawn, and then as soon as the stripers showed up, I'm like, I'm all set with this, and I wouldn't come back to it until the following spring. And then kind of had enough of the saltwater scene, and the canal scene it just got to be too much, too many people, and it was kind of a turnoff for me to, you go down and the guys all kind of knew what they were doing, but you'd go down and you'd set up on a spot, and then 10 minutes later there'd be two bikes, people coming down the rocks, and they're 5 feet on either side of you.
Yeah.
It's just the crowds. The crowds got it. So the largemouth bass fishing, there's a lot of waters you can get to with the kayak now. With
A lot of times
effort.
it's just you in the body of water, and that's it.
Yeah. So I think it was in the fall of like 2019 or 2020. I was like, I want to get back into this. I'm getting away from the stripers. And the first year, I think I was just happy to start catching fish. And then the following year, a friend of mine came out in the boat. He and my brother used to fish tournaments like back in the 80s and 90s. They were like very good tournament largemouth fishermen. So to my brother, it was like, yeah, just do this and this. You go, they're not that hard to catch, right? So for me, the big ones were a challenge. And my Fitzy told me, he goes, if you want to get the big, so I'll roll out like the whole, what I think
The
is
whole program?
The program is, it's all like, what are you doing at a certain time of year to get yourself in front of like the biggest fish in the pond?
Yeah.
And a lot of times the biggest fish in the pond is only going to be available to you for like a short period of time, with maybe like a short, like when I talked earlier about when you go to the canal and you say, okay, what are the best 2 or 3 hours that I can go to the canal and have a crack? Most people, I would say, they're going to say like, okay, the bottom of the west tide and the beginning of the east tide, like when the water's choked down. And I think we touched on this last time as far as the windows for largemouth bass. Like, when's the best time to catch a big largemouth bass? I rule myself out of the night fishing because what I do for a living, I run a country club, and I have to be up at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, so I need my 8 hours of sleep. I'm usually out by like 7:30, 8 at night, so that makes me a daytime bass fisherman. And what I did is, once Google Maps, that was never available back when I was growing up. I always loved coming down the Cape and fishing, and I knew a lot of the ponds had herring runs on them. So you get on the overhead map, and you're like, wow, I had no idea there was a herring run in this place. I didn't know there was one here. Wow, look at this little thing. And I literally would get on there all winter. I would drive around and walk in the woods and like figure out, okay, this pond has it, this, yada, yada, yada. And you put these patterns together. And I started off, like we were talking about the jerkbaits last time. I don't know how I forget exactly how I get onto the bite, but when I fish with my brother, he's like, wait till the buckbrush blooms in the springtime, like last week in April, first week in May. The bass, it doesn't matter what pond you're on, if it has buckbrush, the bass are going to be under it. Showed me how to skip the jig, so I had my jig bite down pretty good. Mm-hmm. That was like the April, May up until they spawn bite. And I was getting like 4 and 5 pounders. I was getting nice fish.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, I was seeing like what's the secret to like the 6 pounders and the 7 pounders and whatnot. So my brother's buddy Fitzy told me, he goes, wait until the end of June. You might find this contrary to what most swimbait fishermen think, but he said the best swimbait bite of the year is the end of June until like the early part of August, as far as size and quantity of fish.
Yeah.
Can you throw a swimbait in the spring and get the
Sure.
big? Yes. But when you go to like consistent size and quantity and numbers and big bags of fish, I've kind of found that the end of June, once they spawn and then they go into that post-spawn funk and they get a little bit funny to catch.
Yep.
And then they start eating again.
They
like
start
towards
trying
the
to
end
put
of June,
the weight
they
back
go
on.
ballistic. So Fitz told me, he goes, see if you can find a Wake Junior 316 lure. Mm-hmm. And he goes, right around the end of June, he was naming the ponds. I fish like Carver and Plymouth a lot, so any substantial pond over there. And he goes, wait till you have the wind blowing on shore. And he goes, just go fish the wind line where it's hitting the shore.
Dude, wind-blown banks are the ticket.
So I was on Sampson's Pond one day, and it's a post-spawn bite.
Yeah.
And I'm fishing the pockets, and I'm getting some decent fish on frogs. Like, they had probably just spawned, and they were still close enough to shore where they were milling around. It was a couple weeks after they were off the beds, but they were moving back up.
I hate that weird transition.
It is.
It sucks.
That's a weird time, but what I think is a good. We'll go through the program, yeah. So finally I see like this dark front up in the sky, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to get destroyed out here. I'm on the far side of the pond. The wind picks up and it's blowing. And I believe I have this 316 wake in the floor of the kayak. I still haven't picked it up. I bought it like back in January. I haven't picked it up yet. Now all of a sudden it's just like it's going absolutely ballistic. The wind's blowing probably 40 miles an hour. So finally I look down and I'm like, that's the only thing that's like big enough and heavy enough that I can buck the wind with. So I put the 316 on, and like one after another, it's like you just discovered electricity. And that was the turning point. That was like in 2021. And like every other lure, they go through cycles of effectiveness, and then I think enough of the fish see them. So like for the first year, all I threw was that 316. It's like a 316 Wake Junior. I had to buy it on Swimbait Underground. Mm-hmm. Embarrassed to tell you what I paid for it, but that was my number one.
That's a big obstacle.
Yeah.
When you're getting into swim bait fishing, is like, I remember one time saying I will never spend more than $45 on a swim bait, and dude, that went out the window so fast.
Yep.
You know,
So you got that Pat's perch that I've seen you.
it's just, it snowballs from there. But all it takes is feeling like you discovered electricity.
Yeah.
And then the next one for 100 is going to be even better.
Yeah.
You know, it's a vicious, slippery
I
slope.
learned the hard way that wasn't true. And then I think I finally got my hands on, it was like, I forget what year Lanciotti started making the Psycho Gill,
Yeah.
but you would just start to see some pictures of people, oh, Psycho Gill, Psycho Gill, Psycho Gill. I'm like, wow, what's that all about? And I went on, again, I went on Swimbait Underground. People have got them on there, they're like $500 or $600. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah.
Right?
Ridiculous.
So I forget how he finally got a hold of one, and I threw it a few times. I couldn't get bid on it, and I'm looking at some of the pictures, and I'm like, wow, this guy has this one. So I actually texted Joe Lanciotti on Facebook, and I was like, hey, what do you think it's worth? Like, I think the chin came off, and I go, can you fix the chin? What do you think of the, like, he just looked at it. He goes, that's one of the original ones. He goes, you got to get one of the new ones. He goes, those aren't. He goes, the one you have isn't what you really want. He said, the new one that we just came up with, if you can get it, he goes, I can't make them fast enough to get them into people's hands. So
He's funny.
I put that old Psycho Gill back on Swimbait Underground, and now all of a sudden I'm getting bids on it, like double, triple what I paid for it. And I could tell they're probably like young kids that just like saved all this summer
That,
paper
or
money to buy
they
it.
recognize the fact that it's an original and it's more of like a, you know,
Nostalgic piece or whatever.
collector's piece.
So this guy texted me 3 or 4 times. He's like, please, please, please sell me that. I'll give you this and this and this. He goes, I'll give you double, you know. And I had bids for, I probably paid a couple $100 for it. These guys like, I'll give you 500, 600. So I messaged this guy back. He seemed like he was decent enough. I'm like, listen, I go, all I want back is what I paid for it, and I'll sell it to you for what I paid. It was like $200.
Yeah.
The guy was ecstatic. He goes, I can't believe how, you know, thank you, you blah, blah, blah. I go, but just keep in mind, I go, I talked to the guy who makes them, and he said, you want the new one. This one isn't. He goes, no. He goes, I want that. I'm going to strip it down. I'm going to repaint it. So anyways, I got rid of that one. I forget how we got my hands on the perch. I think Mike Sales got me one. NBC got me a perch pattern Psycho Gill.
Yep.
And let me tell you something.
Do you have the red tail?
Yeah. That was like electricity for 2 or 3 seasons.
I still haven't gotten one.
Oh. And it was, I think he got it for me like around the end of September, 21 or 22.
Yeah.
And I was fishing a pond in Plymouth. And this is the story. I got 3 7-pounders in about 10 days. All right.
All right,
This will never happen again.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, this was like complete. You know, I was out there fishing when I should have been fishing, and sometimes like you just have a horseshoe up your butt, right?
Yeah.
This is one of those times. So I went to this place in Plymouth that I grew up. I kind of fished it a lot, and it's got an overhang all around the pond.
Yeah.
And
Steep banks.
yeah, and it's got trees that lay in the water. So in the fall, you know, the fish will come back out of the deepest spots and they'll start sitting on the wood, like when the grass all dies off. They usually go from like the grass to the wood to the rocks or something like that. So I get up on this bank, and it's a tree that I've caught a few fish off, so I skip the jig up under the tree. and I just feel like this dit, and I'm like, nothing. Reel it back out. I skip it over to the other side of the tree. Dit,
Yeah.
nothing. And I look in the floor of the boat, and I have, I think it was a Wade Hogs. You ever see those Wade Hogs bluegill?
Toxic. Yeah.
So I tried to get it like under one of the branches, way up, like close to the shoreline, and the line winds up and over the branch, and the lure is sitting like vertical like this, and the tail's in the water. And then again, the fish just comes up and nips at the tail. There's only maybe 2 feet. There's not even 2 feet of water there. So I want to see what it is that's causing this commotion, right? So I take the kayak up, and I still can't see anything. I'm in a very small area. So I ram the kayak into the tree trunk, and I'm like, bang, whatever it is, he's going to come out of there, right? Out of the side comes the biggest bass I've ever seen in my life. Okay, so that was probably what jacked the jig twice.
Yeah.
And the gill. So
Just sucked it and spit it out.
yeah,
real
he
quick.
didn't even take it in. So I wind up coming back a couple weeks later after I picked up the psycho gill, and I'm like, I'm going to go back over there and see if that fish is still hanging out around that tree. So same deal. I cast to the left of the tree, nothing. I cast to the right of the tree, nothing. And then I throw out in front of the tree,
Running across his
and I'm
face.
starting to like burn it, and I'm like, I'm not getting any kind of a bite. So I'm like, screw it, he's not there. And this is like, I learned a technique that works. Is the sudden speed up and
Yep.
burn.
It does get a...
That thing comes out of the tree and lights up the psycho gill, right? So for a second, I didn't know what it was, and then I saw it, and I was like, it's the biggest bass they ever caught. It was
Yeah.
a 7.4, I think. I
There
finally
she
got
is.
the thing in the net. My knees are knocking. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like, I was beyond excited. That's with the perch psycho gill. And then about 10 days later, I'm out on, I can't tell you, reservoir.
Yeah.
But this is where I get a lot of my real big fish. End of the day comes, it's like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Not really in the bite window that you like, but
Sure.
later in the fall, you get an afternoon bite. Like as the water's cold, it gets warm in the afternoon. So I had picked up a couple heavy 5-pound class fish, and I'm just getting ready to pull the kayak out of the water, and I'm like, I'm going to take one more cast down the bank. I throw it down the bank, 2 turns with that perch psycho gill. I get a 7.3. So I'm like, with this thing is like, everywhere I went for the next year, it wasn't just the best swim bait. It was like my best bass lure. I would throw it like in any condition, in any
It's
spot.
hard
and
to
it just,
not have it tied on once
Yeah.
you experience what it's capable of.
yeah.
And sometimes it ends up costing you fish in the long run because it's like, you should be fishing a jig, but you got this big piece of wood tied on.
Yeah, you're going like all in when you swim bait, and then so that thing, so just to touch on what happens with the lure after they've seen it enough times. And there's a couple of good local swim bait guys, and like, yeah, if you keep throwing it, obviously they're gonna stop biting
Sure.
it after a while. So the perch psycho stopped getting the bites. I went to the bluegill psycho, like 2023 or 4, and that like everything restarted again, almost like the intensity of the bites and numbers. So obviously it's like it's not just the lure, but it's the lure and the color. And then I went through another period where like the swim baits were just not doing it for me. I like to fish all different kind of styles. Like even now I do a lot of spin fishing, jig fishing.
Do you throw your jig on a spinning rod or do you throw it on a bait cast?
Depending on the jig, like the lighter, the 1/4 ounce jig, sometimes I'll throw it on. I have this rod that I bought out and went out with a guide in Phoenix. It's called an Alpha Pro.
Yeah.
An Alpha Pro 76er. That's the name of the rod. I guess a lot of tournament guys use them out there, and it'll throw like a 1/4 up to 3/4 ounce. And I'll put I'll run like 20-pound test, some type of a braid, Max Quattro.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the lowest diameter Max Quattro you can get. I think it's 20-pound test. And I run a 16-pound Saltimate leader. It almost has the same diameter. It's like a low, it's a saltwater leader, but it has like really low diameter. And I can throw the lighter jigs. Like if I'm open water jig fishing, I'll use the spinning rod because you can fire that thing halfway across the pond. And then as you get in like the traditional, like the skipping and pitching, I'm all
Yeah, you gotta.
I know there's a couple like highliners that use Some guys use straight braid on a spinning rod too. I know a couple of guys that are pretty well accomplished with that.
Yeah.
With that technique, and but going back real quick to the swim baits too, is just like any lure that you get, you're gonna have to go through a rotation of colors in order to keep it working. Because I was laughing last time when Jimmy was here. He said every time I see your thing on Instagram, I have to go out and buy like 5 more different Megabass 110s in 5 different colors, so I make sure I have the right.
That was my last bass purchase, was 5 Megabass 110s.
Yeah.
It hurt.
Yeah. I got off the swim baits for a while, and then last year, I was on the, I think it's Jers. I don't know if they sell the Psycho Gills and all the jerk
Swimbait Essentials.
Yeah, Swimbait Essentials.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to get another Psycho Gill, but I need to find a color that nobody has or that's rarely used. And there was a blank. There was just a white blank on there. It was like the only one left. And I'm like, I'm going to try the white one and see if, I can restart. Yeah. So I get the white one and I put the red tail on it and the red eyes.
Yep.
And almost that same succession of electricity go back through the lakes that you'd been fishing. And all of a sudden it was like they'd never seen the thing before.
They train up pretty fast. That's definitely,
Yeah.
for sure. The one thing that seems to never change is the jig always catches them.
It does.
It's funny. The jerkbait, I don't know if they really, I think that's a reaction bite anyways, but like with the swim baits, 1,000%.
Yeah.
I think that's why you see certain baits get hot, certain styles of baits get hot, and then like, when crawlers started becoming a thing, it was like the biggest fish in the pond couldn't say no to it, and it was 8s falling and 7s falling and mid 6s falling, and it's like, you go to ponds that nobody fishes a crawler in, you're gonna probably draw a bite from the dominant,
Yeah, it could just be
predator in
one
that
time.
pond, because it's like, I've never seen this, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat it.
I was watching, if you watch Doug Hannon, he was talking about the cyclical nature of like lures and whatnot. And his explanation for why jigs still work and why plastic worms still work and grubs, he said they don't make any sound or identifiable characteristic to the fish. That was his, I was literally watching it this morning. He was talking about the worm. He's like, think about the plastic worm. It's been a hot producer since it was invented.
Sure.
Why do they still work? And he said it's not necessarily because of the color or this or that or anything else. He said the fish can't pattern it because it doesn't click, it doesn't clack, it doesn't make audible,
It's
identifiable things. It doesn't give off a vibration.
so central to their diet.
Yeah.
On the jig side of things, crawfish, and
Yep.
on the worm side of things, it's just what they probably eat the most, and it's not like every time they eat that thing they get stung, right?
Yeah, and you change like your size and your color, but the basic a jig is the same as it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. That basically it's a lead and it's got a hook in it and a skirt, and maybe you throw a trailer on the end of it, and it's the technology outside of the hooks themselves isn't, if I pull out a Stanley jig that I have that's 30 years old and I pull out a modern, the biggest difference you're going to see on it is the hook.
Yeah.
It still has a rubber skirt, has a round head, and if you listen to Butch Brown too, when he was talking about the Depths 250, fishing them in the trout ponds out in California, he modified the 250 and he took the clicker out of it. One of the things he does, he takes the rattle out of the head of the lure as an identifiable. And I think somehow they work the hinge so it swings wider.
Mm-hmm.
But his thing was to take the audible portion of the lure away, so the fish aren't alarmed or alerted or this or that, and they feed
More
solely
natural.
on without the noise on it. That's the only thing I could, if you think about the succession of crankbaits and like you said, the crawlers and the Psycho Gill, and like once they see enough or hear, what are they actually identifying? Is it the vibration pattern? Is it the click? Is it the this? Is it the that that causes the intelligence to rise?
I think we're very good at making these fish smarter than they are, making them out to be smarter than they are. I mean, at the end of the day, they're not all that smart. They swim and eat, and it's like
The
You know,
brain
you
the
give
size
them
of a
too
Tic
much.
Tac.
Yeah, you give them too much credit sometimes, and we just end up getting in our own heads. But I have noticed that with the swim baits, where it's like, all right, this isn't getting the same, because a lot of times you have your milk run. You know, you're
Yeah.
showing the same fish,
That's
the
right.
same bait over and over again. So I think that's why that happens more. And then, like, I don't know, on the more traditional jerk baits and jigs and soft plastics and stuff, it's just a much more natural presentation. And I mean, from a jig perspective, it's like they eat a crawfish, they probably get pinched a few times. I mean, there's that whole like, all right, I got pulled to the surface, or an alien
Something
got put back
happened
in the
here.
water.
Yeah.
He's like, it was a little bit more of an ordeal than just getting bit as I started swallowing this thing
Yeah.
by a couple pincers. But you know,
I used the black and blue in the springtime. People are always like, "What do you think they're? What's your interpretation of black and blue?" I have an interpretation. I was curious what do you think it's?
baby bluegills.
Yeah, bluegills and blackbirds.
Yeah.
I found one a bunch of years ago. I was fishing one of those buckbrush edges.
There's a lot of
Right
nests
after they
in those
start to
things.
leave, and I saw a bass go by with two orange legs sticking out of its mouth. I was like, "What is that?" And then I looked around and I realized like the babies were they were going out on the branches and falling into the water. The bass would come up and
Talk about something that eats anything.
absolutely.
You know. So you start your cold water season throwing a jig. I'm assuming what jerkbait and a jig, right?
Yeah, the succession is as soon as the ice is gone, it's jerkbait, and depending on what kind of a lake you're fishing. If you're fishing a kettle pond, you can't always get the jerkbait down to where the fish are in the deeper places. So if you're fishing in a spot like early in the spring, I don't even need to mention the perennial Cape hot spot. It's about 5 feet deep. It's towards the canal.
Yeah.
It has a herring run on it. And, jerkbait. We had a jerkbait bite there 4 or 5 years ago with my buddy Jordan, and it was the second week in February. It was right around now, but it was an extraordinarily warm winter.
If you own a boat, whether it's a sport fish, a charter vessel, or a commercial rig, your insurance should be as reliable as your gear. That's where Lambros Insurance comes in, specializing in marine coverage for yachts, charter boats, commercial vessels, and marinas. We understand the water because we live it. Dean Lambros isn't just an insurance pro. He's a seasoned captain with years on the water. Protect your boat, your business, and your passion with a policy that actually fits. Visit LambrosInsurance.com or call Dean directly, 203-644-4044, and get covered by someone who speaks your language. I was looking at that before we came on. With this year, the ice is real for the first time. It's like an OG winter.
Yeah.
You actually have the temps and the ice and the conditions that we had as we were kids growing up. It always seemed like there was lots of snow and cold single digit temperatures, and it was like our first real ice season in some time. It was any kind of length to it, but that typically makes for a harder transition. Like as soon as there's ice out, it's like it's on.
Yeah. It's almost like there's still ice floating around in the pond, and I'm catching them on jerkbaits.
Yeah.
And that thing almost works like it's almost like exactly what they want the day after the ice melts. And then it's for me, it's a jerkbait. I don't do as well on a jig when the water's really cold. Sometimes if you get an afternoon where there's like a northeast corner and a cove and the water, like all of a sudden it goes from like 40. Sometimes the water will come up like 8 or 10 degrees, like in some of those back shallows. The fish will go right up there. And then that's your first jig bite of the year. For me, it's always like watching the wind. There's a place I fish in Carver that on one side of the lake I had 45-degree water, and I'm catching them on jerkbaits. And then in the afternoon, the wind was blowing southwest. I went up into the northeast corner of the lake. Water's like 57 degrees. Now I have a jig bite going, whereas on the other side I couldn't get anything to move. And it's but my progression, it's nothing special. I have the highest confidence in the jerkbait. Anytime the water's below 50 degrees to me, and the water is, you can penetrate the water column far enough. Like I'll use those mega bass most of the places I fish with the, I use that Edo Shiner, which is like the bigger, heavier, thicker one. That's not as commonly thrown as the 110. I don't see as many people running it. And then the 110 plus one. And a lot of the places I target, I just like, I'm going to go to a place that has 10 feet of water or less in it. So I know that, like, I'm always in the part of the water column where I can reach the fish.
Yeah.
So if I go to a kettle pond in the middle of March and the water's like 42 degrees and I'm throwing a jerkbait over 16, 18 feet of water, I'm probably not going to get down where the fish are unless I go to like a, you know, a grub or a blade or something like that. So
Sure.
the spring ice out, obviously the shallower lakes are going to warm up quick. And then you're going to go, I almost go from like the jerkbait bite to the chatterbait bite, chatterbait jig.
Mm-hmm.
And then as that thing starts to mature, you start to throw, like, again, I'm telling you, like the Swimbait bite, you can get the biggest, and I have got like close to the biggest fish in my life in the springtime on swimbaits. But the quality and quantity to me on the Swimbait bite is better in the summer than it is.
It is.
Right? Like you might go out and get your PB in the spring on a Swimbait, but it might be the only bite you get that for that whole trip. You might be out all day.
1,000%, and it seems to be a little better suited for me anyways, for like, you know, the slow Huddleston play or a soft swim bait. You know, they just still kind of not gonna move as much. I mean, glides are one thing that I haven't really cracked at, I'd say, but I feel like that's a good cold water play. You can just move it so much slower.
Yeah, the Pearl Mag Draft too is I got a PB caliber fish on that.
Yeah,
a few years ago on the big one on the 8-inch.
Mag
That was more towards the end of April.
there's a progression to it for sure. The night kind of makes things just that, like if there's peepers peeping, they'll eat on the surface at night, and it's like the great equal. It's like the easy button.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it's a lot of it's a matter of what do you do for a living. A lot of the guys that I know work days and fish nights. I have a little bit of flexibility in what I do, so sometimes I can get out and I try to the thing with fishing too is when you, regardless of the kind of fishing you do, is this is something going back to 20 years on the Cape, like what a great book it was as far as like just like telling the story of how things were, but also like the methodology. How do you think about? And I just remember one of the things Frank always told me is like, he's like, always try to be out of step with what everybody's doing. They're fishing on the weekends, you fish on the week. If they're fishing at night, you fish during the day. He was applying it to striper fishing, but largemouth fishing is the same.
The same difference.
You can get yourself out of step, and you're not coming in like on a Sunday or a Monday, Monday on a tournament lake where there was just 50 bass boats and everything in there has a punch hole in its lip.
Yeah.
And that's another part of my strategy too. Get out of step as I go to places that you have to kind of work hard to get into. I had a friend of mine weld me up a kayak cart. And some of the places I push into, I'll go in a half a mile, but I know when I get in there, there's not going to be anyone else in there. Nobody's going to be, put the level of effort in to get into some of the spots. So, and sometimes you get in there and there's the fish that don't really see people that often and they don't see such and such that often. And same thing with any kind of, I told you I get into deer hunting last year.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's like,
is.
what's your strategy? Okay, do you try to get out of step? Do you try to don't try to not to do what everybody else is doing? And with the fishing, I always find getting away from, if you can, you have to be able to get away from it. If it's like if you have a job or a commitment or something that dictates you need to be a certain place at a certain time, it can cut into your.
I think that's the most
your outdoor
impressive part of
success.
what you see people that are perennially or regularly at the top of it, whether it's a local tournament or even on the big stages. It's like to be able to catch heavily pressured fish really well there's an art to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But if you can position yourself to put the extra work in and the extra effort in to get to places that aren't fished as much and fish the way that you've learned how to fish, the reward sometimes can be, a lot greater if you are on that trophy kick. You're looking for, pushing the bar on your PB or something like that. But at the end of the day, that fish has to live there too, right? A lot of these places that are off the beaten path, if they don't have the forage, if they don't have a herring run or, a good population of sustenance, it's like sometimes you get back there and it's like, oh, this is going to be great. And you catch nothing but 8-inch to 12-inch bass that are all stunted. And you're like, all right.
I went through that. I can tell if you want a list of places where not to fish, I have a good one. I
think we all do. But I will say this. One of the places that I thought was bit by that, wow, this is all just stunted bass. I PB'd and then PB'd again the very next day. And it was my first time ever catching fish on a jig. I literally was by myself, first day with my kayak. And I was like, let's tie one of these stupid things on that I've never caught a fish on. Tied a jig on. I put like a Berkeley Hawk Hog trailer because it was the closest thing that made sense. And I got a 7.5 pounder on the scale. And then the next day I didn't have my scale and caught one that made that 7.5 pounder look like 5 that I regretted not having a scale. But up until that point in time, never having fished it, casting back to the bank and always beating around the bank, nothing but, dink, central. And every now and again you'll go back there and you'll catch 40 fish. And, if it's the right time of the year from February to late May, beating the bank with a jig, you'll get 1 or 2 of the right bites. And you get the little pecks and you set the hook in, it's a little dink. And then all of a sudden your jig runs off and you're like, oh, that's
and
you're
talking a different. But that's fishing in the cold water is fishing out of step too, if you think about it. Boats come off the water, and then some years on the Cape, I've had 50-degree water almost like up until December 1st.
What's your favorite time to fish in the ponds?
As far as
is it ice out or is it like late season?
Like ice out, I love because it's almost like I feel like the ponds reset, the fish are reset. They're like they haven't been.
There's still that beautiful green. They look like they've been reborn.
The water's nice and clear. You don't get all that chalky and the cyanobacteria stuff you see in the summer. That's a turnoff for me in the summer. That's why I kind of. And then going into the fall, once the water's 50. Well, my favorite time for largemouth is like below 50 degrees. So when it drops in the fall, it's game on right up until it starts to really warm up in the springtime. And that period of time is when there's not a lot of people in the water. You have most of the places you're going to go for cold water. It's either if people don't figure out the bite, like you have to figure out the bite, and using getting proficient with the jerkbaits made my winter fishing a lot more fun. And I got a PB caliber fish 4 or 5 years ago at the end of January. I mean, I couldn't even feel my fingers. And going through the cycles, like I was talking about the jerkbaits, I had the it's called a King Coro Gold. It's a Vision 110. Yeah. And that was my go-to for a few years. It was just a gold flash side and an orange belly, and I couldn't keep it away from them. And then all of a sudden, all right, why isn't this thing working? What's going on here? And then I went to the Tennessee shad, and it's like it started all over again. And then the Tennessee shad started to fade. So I'm like, okay, what do I have left? And I picked up the Edo Shiner, which is the bigger profile. They cast like a bullet. And most of those lures, too, you're going to trash the hooks. If you get a good session or you get into a pond that's got pickerel in it, sometimes I'll come home every night and change the hooks on them. I'll put brand new hooks on them.
I've had pickerel ruin them on me a lot, where they fill with water. And it's like,
that's what happens. They get
worst.
cracked. Oh, you get it if you're in the kayak sometimes and they have the jerkbait and they smack their head against the, there goes your $25 jerkbait.
So I learned the hard way because I started like trashing them, like just like to, Jimmy or whatever, being like, dude, I'm spending $25 on these things and they're, good for a session or two and full of water.
Yeah, they sink.
So I started to like really kind of look at it from a perspective of like bait preservation. And it's like the two worst things that you can do is smack your bait on the surface when you're, trying to get weeds off of it or grass off of it, and drag a fish onto shore, especially if it's like a pebbly shore.
Yeah.
Because the first thing that they do is smack the baits off the pebbles or the shoreline.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, dum that's why that's happening. But
yeah.
pickerel will do it too sometimes. And yes, when they hit the kayak,
The best to have this thing, I call it the pickerel mitten. It's a big, heavy leather glove. And if I'm in a pond that has a lot of pickerel in it now, I use the pickerel mitten, and I just grab them. I don't even let them get close to the kayak. I keep them. This is to preserve
the
lure,
$25,
and then to keep the lure from punching your fingers. I'll get it stuck in my sleeve, or I'll get it stuck in my waders.
Jerkbait season, your hand becomes a pincushion.
Yeah, I keep the pickerel mitten, and I just slide it on. So if you can get the fish on the surface and just get them right behind the gill plate, and then you can work the hook off without fear of hooking yourself or anything else. But
And never fish a jerkbait without bringing a pair of pliers with you.
That's right. Yeah, or the hook outs.
Mm-hmm. That's the worst. You're like, oh, I got an hour to fish real quick, and you don't have you have just your rod with a jerkbait tied on, and it's like, no, I did it again.
Yeah.
Without fail, you catch a monster pickerel that just swallows it, and you're like,
'Cause most of the herring ponds have a lot of pickerel in them.
We're a
Pretty
big
good
pickerel
populations,
state.
Once you get over the bridge, so. But that Edo shiner is a good one, and then it's like any other kind of lures. You go through the rotation of colors. It's like the last time I fished a lot of jerkbaits. I mean, this winter you couldn't. It was gone before the ice was there before you could. The mat shad, just that kind of like, it almost looks like a fog. It's a translucent, but it's got like a dull finish on it.
Nice.
Just called the mat shad. It has like an olive back on it. And then I started experimenting with the Canada, the Megabass Canada. It's like I think it's an 8-inch, 1-ounce jerkbait.
Really?
And you'd be amazed at, I don't know if it's because they're used to seeing the 110 size, or sometimes you just get size and quantity on a giant bait versus a small bait. And sometimes the small bait has the money. So when I go out in the wintertime, I'll have a standard 110 tied on, and then I'll have a 110 plus 1, and then I'll have an Edo shiner. And then last year, I went through a couple of the lakes that I usually do really well at. I couldn't get a bite on the smaller size bait, and I put the Canada on. Same thing. It was like discovering electricity. It's a big jerkbait, and it's got, people might even call it a rip bait. It's about the size of a bomber, a long A.
Wow.
It's got a high profile on it.
They don't care about size. We know that.
Well, a friend of mine fishes. He told me he fishes with the what's the scanner called? The side scanner.
Oh, forward facing.
He fishes the forward facing sonar with it. We were talking about it a couple of years ago, and he put some gigantic fish on the deck with the sonar and the Canada. And he's like, I was fishing glide baits and this and that. They wouldn't touch it. He goes, I put the Canada. I'm like, it's because they haven't seen a lot of that yet. I go, but once people start to figure it out. But it's a big bait and it's a finesse bait, so it's not. The big swim baits they're nice to fish with. They're big. You whip them out there and you just reel them in. That's it. There's
not much to it.
No
a lot of
magic
times
to
it
it.
is chuck and wind and cover water, and then you move the right fish, and it's like, oh, I'm the man. It's like, dude, you just made
reeling it
your 100th cast, and you put the time in, and one was turned on and ready to eat when it ran across its face or over its head.
So,
but I mean, it's kind of like the idiot-proof element to it. Sometimes it's just nice to go out and move a big fish doing that. But there's so many different levels to it all. I'll give you a quick one on the jerkbait, just to expand the repertoire. I probably said it in the last one, but the Shimano World Minnow with that like flash boost technology has been, it's like at a stop, the bait looks like it's breathing because that thing is just in there shimmering, and it's really cool. It gets a lot of bites on pause. But I wanted to segue into like, how do you go about figuring out the cadence that they want to eat when you're throwing a jerkbait? Do you always fish the same cadence, or do you kind of switch it up and let the fish kind of tell you what they want? What's your approach when you?
The whole thing with the jerkbait is you want to get it down to the depth where you think the fish is at.
Yep.
So the most important thing, especially if you're on the bank, I get a lot of fish off the bank on a jerkbait, and I'll usually try to get on the bank where the wind's blowing away, if I can. And if I can't, the distance you cast is key on a jerkbait, because you want to get the lure. The farther out you can get it, the deeper you can get it to run. And what happens on the first 2 or 3 or 4 feet of your retrieve is you're just trying to get that thing down to depth. So if you're fishing say you're fishing a 110 plus 1.
Yep.
You want to fish as light a line as you possibly can. So if you can fish, if say you're in a kettle pond and there's no structure and there's nothing that can get in your way and snag your line, you don't need to really fish over 6 pound test. Like 6 pound test is a lot stronger than you think it is if you fish fresh line with a good knot.
And the drag set right.
Yeah, and you have it set up right and you have the right rod. You can basically like pretzel a spinning rod with 6 pound test on it if you have the right rod. So the first thing is to get the distance that you need. The lighter the line, the better. If I'm fishing in a pond that has cover in it or something that I think the fish might get into, I'll run, it's like 15 or 12 pound super slick. And I'll put an 8 or 10 pound bumper of Maxima Ultra Green. I've just like that leader material works and it's inexpensive. And cadence wise, it's like when I fish with the jerkbait, as soon as it hits the water, I burn it like 3 or 4 cranks to get it down to depth. And then most of the time when it gets, they'll tell you what they want, but most of the time it's just the traditional jerk pause. If you fish with the mega bass, and I'm just giving you, that's what I fish the most of. I fish with the mega bass and I fish with a KVD, the Strike King KVD. The Strike King for me works better when the water's a little bit warmer because you have to, it'll float up unless you put a belly weight. Like if you manipulate it and you can get it to hang in the water, you put a heavier hook on it.
They do have a little steadier rise than the mega bass.
It wants to come up. So if I'm fishing like the early part of the jerkbait bite, like when the water's like right about, it's like 52, 50, 51, it's just starting to get into that cold water. November is like I've done extremely well. Not as well on the mega bass, believe it or not. It's like when the water's like still almost 50 this and that, it's like, and I work it faster.
Rise.
Yeah, because that thing doesn't, you don't let it rise because you're going to retrieve it fast. It's like boom, 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 and it's coming.
I give those to my kids because they don't have the patience to slow down, and that gets bit in that faster cadence pretty well.
And then as you get colder, the cadence comes down. With the 110s, a lot of times, if you put a heavy enough front hook on it, you can get the thing to freeze in the water column. Like you might have, I forget the sizes. I don't know if it comes with like 3 number 4s or 3, whatever it is, but I might go 4-4 and then a 5 on the belly.
Yep.
Or 5-5-4.
So you'll use you'll change out. Well, you're changing the hooks pretty regularly, so you'll manipulate the hook situation to get the bait to do a little something different.
Yeah, and as the water temperature changes, the buoyancy changes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The cold water is more dense, so it wants when the water gets more dense, your buoyancy gets affected by the water temperature. So as it gets really cold, sometimes you might throw the same bait in 60-degree water and it'll suspend to rise.
It'll
and then we throw it in
different.
50-degree water, it'll freeze in the water column. So
That's
you have
science.
to have that whole, But getting it down to the depth is the big thing.
Yeah.
It's like if you're fishing a pond that's like 6 or 7 feet deep, you cast as long as you can. The more line you have out, the more time you have to.
More time you're in the strike zone too.
And then most of the bites on the jerkbaits for me come just as it gets into the prime strike zone. And if you're in a boat and the bait's starting to rise up off the bottom, that's usually where you're. Like, in other words, if you have a shorter cast, it's going to come out of the strike zone quicker. That's why I always say get it. If you're fishing jerkbaits, learn to cast it as far as you can. If you have to go super light grade, get it out, get it down, and then see what the cadence is. But as it gets colder, absolutely, like freezing that thing in the water column. I'm like you. I'm not patient enough to let the thing sit there for 30 seconds. So.
I do. Like I used to not be able to, but like I've gotten so many bites where I was like answering my phone, and next thing you know, the thing's been sitting there for 20 seconds, and it's like all of a sudden your line starts running away.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, so like temperatures make a big difference, and the longer pauses sometimes is a ticket. And what that bait's doing, I think, a good friend of mine, Robbie Taylor, was like, dude, sometimes they want a slow rise. Sometimes they want it dead still. Sometimes they want a slow fall. So he introduced me to suspend dots.
Everglades Boats is an industry leader in premium offshore fishing boats. Founded in 1997 by boating industry legend and former Boston Whaler executive Bob Doherty, Everglades revolutionized the boat building industry with the invention of the ram cap process for one-piece unsinkable holes. Respected for its renowned hull ride, Everglades builds center console and hybrid boats from 25 to 45 feet that make a statement about the status and savvy of their owner. Everglades has received numerous industry awards and achieved an unparalleled reputation for superior safety, performance, and quality. For more information about Everglades boats, stop by your local dealer or visit evergladesboats.com. Everglades Boats, built for beyond.
Those suspend dots kind of have been fun to play with, and I ended up like losing those, and then realizing that, you know how it is. They're in your waders, they're in your box, they're, in here, there, they're getting dragged around everywhere you go, and then all of a sudden the adhesion starts, not working as well. So what I ended up buying was like lead tape off of Amazon.
Yeah.
And it's basically just on a roll, and the adhesion's like 3M. It's really good. And you can just take your shears and just trim it,
Can make it
to whatever
size you
shape
need.
you want. It plays with glide baits. It plays with, because a lot of my glide baits that I thought were going to be great, I just couldn't get them down into the strike zone. And they'd always come up to the surface. And I'm like, this sucks. So I would belly weight them and get them down. But you're doing the same thing with your hooks, basically.
Yeah, and the hook's a little more tedious to change the hook because,
Yeah.
like, say you go to the water and you have a 5 on the front, or you have a 4 on the front and 2 5s, and then it's like all of a sudden, all right, this isn't working. I want to change it. Like those dots, I have a pack of those dots. You can just stick it on there,
Yeah.
and if you don't like it, you can take it right back off it. Because in the winter, it's like
You could play
it's
with
cold.
it on the fly
You
a
don't
lot
want to be
easier.
like split rings, taking the hooks off. You want to show up like ready to go.
Yep.
Especially in the winter, because you know how it is when it gets cold. Gets hard to tie knots. Everything just becomes slower. It becomes more tedious to do things, or you get cold and maybe you don't feel like retying the knot.
Yeah,
And I
you
just
get
want to
lazy.
fish. I don't want to be.
Yeah.
So I want this thing ready to roll when I get to the water. So if I'm in a boat, I might have 2 or 3 different rigs all tied up, right? This is my Edo Shiner rod. This is my 110+1. So instead of having to retie anything, you just pick up a different rod. I mean, in a kayak, you can do it when you're off the bank. A lot of times I'll just bring 2 rods off the bank, pair of pliers. And you'd be surprised what you can get off the bank. It's highly specific to the pond you're fishing. I have 3 or 4 ponds where you can catch enormous fish off the bank in the middle of the winter.
I've done pretty well wading from the banks with both a jig and a jerkbait. But yeah, there's certain ponds that just, you can get in the right spot, you can upset very little, and you can get to the juice. And then if the wind's right, I love a wind-blown bank, then everything kind of starts to fall in place for you.
Yeah. And then time of day, too, that was the other thing I was going to touch on, is like what time of day do you typically catch your biggest bass in the lake and why?
I do well in the mornings, like, first light into like that 8:30 time frame, and then I have to get to work. Lunchtime has been hit or miss, a lot of misses, but like there's some good windows there. And then late afternoon has been kind of the more surprising one, I think, where it's been like, I fished this morning and did nothing. Came back late afternoon before I maybe went home, and it was like 3, 4 o'clock or something like that.
Right.
Or it was a late lunch, and it was like, I just covered this morning. And
Yeah,
she
a lot
was
of it's
nowhere
like
to be found.
social, your lifestyle, like when can I go? So it's like, okay, my favorite time's in the afternoon, but the only time I can fish is in the afternoon. And I was watching a Doug Hannon video recently talking about, and Butch, like, it's kind of funny, like Butch Brown and Doug Hannon, I mean, there's not too many guys that have caught more
Sure.
10-pounders than those guys. They both say the same thing about what's the best time of day and why. And you're saying for like first thing in the morning is my dead zone, so I never personally rush to the lake anymore unless I just want to get on the water and relax for a few hours. So say if you look at the timestamps on all my pictures of my fish, I'd say 90% of them are between 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Now at a different time of the year, like that first bite in the spring, if the water's cold and the cove warms up and the fish move up in the like early in the
Yeah.
spring, that late afternoon bite's
That's where
really
I do.
good.
That's where I do well with the
morning's
jig.
good. Yeah.
Yep.
The rest of the year, even late fall to like mid to late fall, once the water starts to get almost cold, you can get them in the afternoon. But I'd say 90%. If I showed you every largemouth bass picture I have on there, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And most of my really big fish are like 11 to 1. Is it because I fish at that time of day and that's when I can go?
Because the sun is where it's at? Is it because it could be a million different things?
Yeah.
What do you think it
So,
is?
Doug Hannon says the biggest fish in the lake get big for a reason, and he goes, and they feed. He said, regardless of what anybody says about largemouth bass, they primarily feed by sight. They're not a sound feeder. They're not a scent feeder. He says they have these big bug eyes on the top of their head so they can see what it is they're going after. So he talks a little bit about the available sunlight in the water in the middle of the daytime. You have the highest visibility in the middle of the day. They can see the best, and therefore maybe they're the most confident or safe. And then he also said the middle of the day, especially around weeds, when the sun gets overhead, the oxygen production in the weeds is at its highest in the middle of the day because
So
the
they
sun
got a little
angles
bit more
over.
pep in their step.
Yeah, and he said as the sun starts to tip in the afternoon and the grass line goes into the shade and the oxygen production on the weeds goes down, they might move to a spot that's lit and still has. And it's funny, I just observed it, and then I heard these two guys say it, and I was like, there's something to
It makes
that middle
sense
of the day
for a lot
window.
of reasons.
Yeah. And Butch Brown, if you watch his podcast, he goes, I'll get to the lake. He goes, I'll drink a coffee, have a sandwich out in the boat. He goes, and not, a lot of days I don't even start thinking about the bite until like 9 o'clock. He goes, and then usually by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm out of there. It's the window. And then he also talks about the moon. I think we talked a little bit about this on the previous, is the moon not being present in the sky, which is an interesting one. So if you go around, like around the new moon and the full moon, the moon not present in the sky is like this. The lunar cycle is constant.
The muskie guys always say you want the moon under your feet when you're looking for that muskie bite window, and I was always like, that's interesting.
Yeah. So and then if you look at the there's this lunar, it's a fishing thing, and it shows like the 4 quarters of the moon and which one is the best and why.
Yep.
But if you fish during the full moon period it seems like the 10 days before the full moon up to the full moon that's an absolute hot period for big fish.
Yep.
If you follow that net tournament, that Swimbait tournament that's online, I fished in it for a couple of years. And whenever anybody puts in a fish, I always look at like what time of day do they get it, where does it fall within the lunar cycle and this and that. And like that period of time between 7 to 10 days before the full moon has a big spike in giant fish. Right around the full moon, it gets a little bit less, and then like 2 or 3 days, 4 days after the full moon, you get another spike in giant fish.
Yep.
And then from the last quarter into the full moon, it tends to be a little bit less, and then right around the new moon, you get a spike, and then you get a couple dead days, and then you're back into that.
I've definitely noticed that.
On the full moon, too, is when, like, the moon is, on the day of the full moon, could explain why some of the big fish get caught in these periods, is the moon sets. I think on the day of the full moon, the moon sets at 5 a.m., so if you're fishing during the full moon in the daytime, the moon is it's under your feet, so to speak.
Yep.
And that's a constant. That's not, okay, the full moon is at 4 o'clock this year and it's at 2 o'clock. The tides in the lunar cycle are all constant. So if you're fishing on the full moon, your tide is going to be at a certain, on Boston, the tide's going to be at midnight, and on Newport, it's going to be at 8:24 or whatever it is.
Yep.
Those are constant.
Yep.
And then it adjusts a little bit for where you go. But the moon, where it is in the sky based on what part of the phase you're fishing. So that's 7 to 10 days before the full moon. The moon's usually going down in the morning. So if you get out there at 7 o'clock in the morning, it might still be in the sky, but 9 o'clock, the moon goes down. And you'll see a relationship between the moon going down and then all of a sudden, and then some of the better Swimbait guys I know will watch for the moonrise in the afternoon. And he's like, I can only go for an hour this afternoon. I'm going to go out for moonrise. And sure enough, he hits a 5, 6, 7 pounder just before the moon comes up. So it was funny because I was telling my brother about it. And he sent me a picture of a fish, and I was like, I snapped the picture, and I'm like, okay, 1:29 p.m. And I went back and I texted him back and I said, the moon came up at 1:31, and he's like, no way. I said, yeah. And that was there's an absolute relationship between the moon up, the moon down. So
I
if you get-
personally hate a full moon, but I've also had some pretty lights out fishing on a full moon, but I've had far more like skunk missions.
Yeah.
And some people are like, oh, dude, the big fish. Sometimes the full moon is what they want. I'm like, I don't see it. The only thing that it's good for is you get better depth perception at night.
Yeah.
But I haven't loved a full moon. I can probably count on one hand when it's been good, as opposed to like, 3 and 4 hour skunk sessions.
Yeah.
But
For any species.
leading up
with
to
the
it,
moon showing.
and coming out of it, it's one of my favorite times to fish. But there's that, and then there's the next level of it where, like you said, that transition of moonrise, and
That's what I look at when I go. If I'm going to go out on a pond, and I just say I have all day to fish, I'll go to the moon chart. I have it snapped on my phone, and I'll just see, okay, what's the moon phase? Okay, it's such and such. The moon's coming up at 2:30. I'll get on the water at like 1 o'clock, and I'll just fish for those 2 hours. And more often than not, you'll get that right as that moon's either coming up or down or making a move. Bang, boom. So, and I'm kind of learning, like when you and I were chatting about me, I started hunting last year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not experienced enough to tell anybody like when you should be out there. I can tell you when I go out there, and like my experience so far and a lot of my fishing too is I just like to find like a snap, like a 2 or 3 or 4 hour period where I can go out and be focused and pay attention and be at my best. My fishing's always been the same way. Like I fished with guys, like when I fished with Mike Varaca, we'd fish the canal for 2 or 3 hours, and he's like, I'm going to Westport to fish the rest of the night. And I'm like, I'm going home. I'm all set. I have my window where I said I'm going to go out, and my largemouth fishing is largely like I've narrowed it down to where I make the trips based on that 3 or 4 hour window, and I watch the moon and I watch the wind.
Yeah.
Striped
maximizing
bass again,
your
same
opportunity.
thing. It's like, when do you go? When I used to striper fish on the Cape, I would just figure, especially in the boats, guys would go out and they'd stay out there for 8 or 10 or 12 hours. I'd usually go out there for 3 or 4, right around that, whatever period of tide that I had the most confidence in. And then, like I said, I'm just learning how to deer hunt now. Everything, all my activity has been an hour before daylight until 3 hours after. Everything.
Yeah.
Not to say it doesn't happen at the other periods,
Sure.
but now all of a sudden it's like you're relating, you're going after a wild animal and it's got certain habits, it's active at certain times, and like everybody that talked to me about getting into deer hunting, they're like, you have a lot of experience fishing, and just remember it's the same kind of thing. You're going after a wild animal, it's got certain habits. Find what
A
works
lot of
for you.
similarities there
Yeah,
between
it's
those two
crazy.
things, absolutely. As far as your Northeast pursuits go, what do you what are your goals going into this season from Ice Out forward? You got any things that it's like, I would love to hit this bar or do this? Is there anything on the local bucket list on that front?
I have a couple. I've been going out to bigger lakes because what happens a lot of time on the smaller ponds is you find you run into the same fish. And like if I get a big fish, I always put it on the board.
Yep.
And I can see the scales in the body. And I've like on a 20, 30 acre, maybe even 40 acre pond, a lot of times you catch the same. Like I've heard people be like, oh, I get 4 6s out of there. And I'm like, no, dude, you get the same 6 4 times, right? You see the picture.
Exactly.
See the belly mark, see this over there. So I have ponds that are on the small side that I can go to, and I'm like, I know I can go over and get a shot at
I
a
can
really
go catch
big
Sally
fish.
real quick.
So now I'm kind of gravitating towards bigger open water, and I don't really fish with the electronics. I fish kind of old school. As the cast is your fish finder. The cast tells you, okay, you're doing something right, are you doing something wrong? I have a couple larger bodies of water, like South Shore, 500-600 acre lakes, and you want to figure them out. Like when you get like a trophy size fish out of a pond,
you want to crack
you've accomplished.
the code.
You want to crack the code. So
The next place.
a lot of the stuff around Plymouth, that's where I got most of my PBs in that area. And then I'm delving a little bit into Rhode Island now. I like to try to find
Rhode Island's got
the
some big
body.
fish.
Yeah, it does. It does. I don't need to mention his name, but he's the king of the trophy bass in the Northeast. And Rhode Island, Connecticut, there's some stuff out there that's off the radar. But I like to go to a big body of water that's hard to fish, and push yourself to figure it out. And going back to, remember we were talking earlier about the post spawn, like why it's like a funk and it's like a weird period. One of the ponds I actually felt a good accomplishment. It's about a 600-acre pond, and it has very steep shelves on it, and it has expansive flats. And the fish are in the shelves most of the year. They come up temporarily to spawn. When the pond's up in the springtime, before they pump it down, the fish are up under the buckbrush and everything, and you can catch them for a couple weeks. And then as the water resource, it's a municipal water supply, as it starts to pump down, the pond drops, and then the fish, they vacate the shallows and they sit off the edges. And post spawn last year, I kind of figured out like what the water depth has to be in relation, and I started throwing the good old wacky rig Senko, but I have this. I think it's called the fat stick or something like that.
Yep.
It was almost to the exception of every other lure I had in my box, sitting on the edge, the deep water transition, where it goes from about 12 feet down to 15 feet, and same thing. It was like electric once I figured out the range, and I'm figuring out the range by looking over the side. I can see the grass line dropping, and then when I see the grass line under the water go away, I know I'm like, visually when you can't see the grass, you know you're right on and you kind of trace it around. Saltwater is kind of like we get into tuna.
Yeah.
School tuna.
Yeah,
we're not, it's something to behold. Everybody's into it too. Like you go out there,
a whole world to explore.
You go out off of the backside of Block Island. Everybody's in on it now. It's not a secret, but you go out there and
it's a different.
Yeah,
it's a whole different world.
My energy now is really, it's like I have that nervous excitement energy now for the woods. Equal or almost more than that, because you've done it. It's new to me, and now I'm like, when you start making these discoveries,
it's a new frontier.
It's a new frontier. So that's like my thing now is I spend a couple days a week, even in the woods now, with the HuntX map, looking at land contours, which way's the wind blowing, how do I get in here? It's all similar to fishing, but that's, like I said, for my outdoor pursuit right now.
Do you think you've ever encountered a double digit in the Northeast bass fishing? Like, saw it, hooked it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because that's the grill, I would say.
Yeah,
that's the mark.
That hasn't been done very often.
No, and so
hasn't been done
very
very
small contingent that's done it.
It's hard to. It's like, how they say, catch them first, weigh them later.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, how much weight is this thing carrying on its body? I'm going to go ahead and say no. I've never seen
You're up
one
in the sevens
water.
though. You've gotten
I got a lot of
multiple
sevens.
7-pounders. Have you broke 8 yet?
I haven't broke 8.
So
a lot of the times it just depends on when you catch it.
that's 1,000%
Because if
true.
you, I'm not giving anything away, but like Dan, I talked to Dan Southwick. He got a 915.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him about. He goes, did you see that fish? He goes, that thing has room for a lot more
Yeah.
body weight on it. And I just remember chatting with him. He goes, I'm going to go back in that area and see if I can find that thing in March or April.
There's such a ebb and flow to their body weight over the course of a season. Some of those sevens you caught could be an 8 if you caught it at the right time. You know. But
Bill Q got the 10. He got a 10 plus.
I don't know about that one.
He got a 10 plus. I think it was out of Long Pond, and he said it threw up a 2-pound brown trout. He hooked it, and it came up and cropped out a 2-pound brown trout. And when he weighed it in, it was so.
Yeah.
Even it all depends on what's in them. That's the thing Dan told me too. He said it depends on when you catch them. He goes, if you catch that thing 2 hours later after it just sucked down a bunch of herring or a couple of bluegills, but it has to have the body for it. You don't normally see the super duper thick fish in the Northeast. They tend to have a more streamlined body than the southern fish.
Timing is everything for sure. And then, if he held down his lunch that day, that fish was that much heavier.
Yeah.
It's a great. I mean, we're blessed. We got some of the best, freshwater fishing, which just hands it over to the salt, and then back to the fresh. So
Yeah.
it's been fun to explore this with you. I like the pattern of your seasons. How it's like, jerkbait to jig to some of the soft stuff to some of the swim baits, and then just repeats again. So it was fun talking with you today. I appreciate you coming
Pleasure.
back in and
Very happy to be
diving
here.
in. Jimmy's gonna be bummed he missed the surf talk, because he probably could have been a lot more on top of that than I don't have that history like he does, like you do, but it's something that's a fun thing to see what it was like back then. But
Yeah, I was just
appreciate it.
lucky to be there when I was there. You were
Yeah.
born at a certain time. You came in contact with certain people at a certain era. And
That's what
you
makes
have
it special.
You have the stories, back before the communication was slower. Everything was slower. It was
Yeah,
more
lots
simple and it was
changed.
more secretive
Different
and
world we
less.
live in
Yeah,
now,
it's insane now. But
Zigging when everyone else zags. I like that.
Yeah,
That's my
absolutely.
takeaway for
Yeah.
for this one. We've been that's a good rule to live by. So thanks again, Mike. It was great having you, man.
I appreciate it,
Yeah.
Anthony. Good to be here.
For sure.